Hey, you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Can you hear me all right?
Say something now.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Coming through all right? Yeah?
Sort of. I don't have problems like when I contact certain people on here, but I do other times. So it's kind of, inconsistent.
Let me just check my connection. Yeah, seems all right.
You got yourself a cold or
Yeah,
something.
should be good to go.
You sound kind of nasally. Do you have a cold or?
I've got a cold.
But are you good to talk? Cause you did come on here.
Huh?
But are you good to talk? Because you did come on here.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
All right. Well, you want me to start us off, or would you like to?
Well, you wanted to talk to me, so yeah, I was wondering what's up. What did you want to talk about? It's all down to you, mate.
I was wondering a lot of things, but I'll describe a hypothetical society that I'm going to call fascist, and you tell me if this matches your ideal of a paradise, right? So
Yeah, go for it.
a highly traditional society in which people revert back to the traditional roles of say ancient Europe or ancient Britain or these sort of things in which there's strong family values, strong marriage related values, strong religious values. There's a church and the state, and they merge, and all power comes to the state. Everyone is obedient to it, and also the church, which influences the state's decision. So, religion, Christianity in particular, plays a large role in the laws. And the Ten Amendments, is the Ten Commandments, is that it? Is that what is it 10?
Ten Commandments, yeah.
Yeah, and their laws, right? So you have their actual laws, right? So basically just a Christian equivalent of Sharia, and everybody there is very traditional,
No,
very
no.
very nationalistic, um, and very and there's very it's a very authoritarian government. You know, you can't do anything that's bad for your health or bad for the health of others, and you have to always follow with the status quo, right? So is that a good description, or should I add more?
No, that's pretty much. Although your thing about Sharia law is interesting, but if you've got more to add, we can come back to that.
Well, why the comparison? Because I made the comparison because they do overlap Abrahamic religions, but also because we're talking about a religious law. The closest thing outside of that, like the closest thing I can think of, is the fact that you can't kill cows in some states of India, which is a Hindu religious law. That's all I can come up with.
Right. Okay. So the first thing is you're drawing the comparison with Sharia law. Now, Ten Commandment law isn't a lot different from what we actually have now. I think we spoke about this last time. I said, which of the Ten Commandments would you not have enshrined in law? Except maybe except let's say, thou shalt worship no other god before me. So say that's not enshrined in law.
Now let me take a look at this.
What
Ten
prob?
Commandments. Yeah, Ten Commandments. All right.
Thou
Okay.
shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal.
See, these are laws. Like these would be like legal things, right? So I would probably object to all of them. Wait, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt. Yeah, okay. So one is submitting to God, right?
Yeah, but as I said to you before, I wouldn't be. You wouldn't be able to enshrine something like that in an actual law.
Okay. Well, one of
You
them
can't
is
force someone to believe in God. And here's the point where it comes to theocratic fascism: is the fact you can enforce Christian morality, but you cannot force someone to go to church because then otherwise it's not faith. There's no point in there is no point in having an enforced faith because then it's not faith, and you
right, but
completely defeat the point of it.
I don't know. Some of
So in
these
terms of in my Well, it works for the Muslims because that's the only way they can enforce their fucking religion, is by the sword.
Right, but a lot of
But
these
when it
don't
comes
look
to,
like laws.
what do you mean?
Like a lot of these don't look like laws. Like, all right, well, first is one, you can't have any other gods than the Christian God. The other one is that you cannot make upon thee any graven. I don't understand these. Take the law. I think that's a blasphemy law. Look, I wouldn't ban blasphemy. Honor thy father and
Graven images can be. It covers a variety of things. So graven images would cover things like think obscenity laws. We have obscenity laws for certain things. It's illegal to show an erect penis on British television, for example. That would, I suppose, come under graven images.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a Christian thing though, because whether or not we're talking about a Western country,
Well, that was my point entirely, is that we have these things in law anyway. Sharia law, if we was to implement Sharia law, this is where your comparison falls flat. If we were to implement Sharia law, then things would look radically, radically different in terms of our legal system, and it would not improve for the better.
Let me just think. What are some aspects of Sharia law? Okay, one aspect of Sharia law is that you can't have sex outside of marriage. Do you support that or not?
What? Saying, yeah, no, I support that. I absolutely support that.
So you do.
Rampant fornication is a problem.
So you do support making that illegal?
Not illegal, no. Well, definitely. Well, okay. When we say illegal, you look at it in the scope of what you are able to actually enforce. Some things you cannot know for certain. There is no practical way of knowing that everyone who is having sex is doing it within the frame of marriage.
Okay, this is all hypothetical,
so there would
though.
be no point. What, hypothetically, if I could make it illegal?
Yeah.
What, and make it actually enforceable, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, but a society where you can't blaspheme, you can't take any other god but one god, you can't drink alcohol, you can't have sex outside of marriage.
Sorry. Tell me where in Christianity you can't drink alcohol.
Okay, well, would you ban alcohol? Yes or no?
Would I ban alcohol? No. It's not forbidden in the Bible at all. Okay, I'll find the exact thing from Romans. Hang on. I can't remember the exact thing verbatim. Right. Matthew. It wasn't Romans, it was Matthew. Matthew 15:11. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, this is what defiles them. So there's no prohibition in Christianity in drinking, although obviously public drunkenness is something that we've got a massive problem with drinking culture over here.
You do, but
in terms of enforcing that in law, yeah, you could definitely do something there and stopping the 24-hour drinking culture because, yeah, it generates money, but it also generates a shit ton of crime. But there's nothing to stop you drinking alcohol in the Bible. And in fact, Peter even said, take a bit of wine, it's good for your stomach.
Right.
So there's no prohibition against drinking and there's no prohibition against food.
But you wouldn't ban
some. Catholic.
But it's unhealthy, right? That's objectively true. It takes years off your lifespan.
What, would I ban alcohol outright?
Well, I'm asking you the question.
I would limit the effects of the sort of drinking lad culture and shit that we've got now. Definitely, I wouldn't ban it outright.
So
not everything needs a sledgehammer.
Not everything needs
things like that. Then.
That doesn't make any sense because
not every problem needs a sledgehammer. Okay, when I say a sledgehammer solution, I mean like you can look at certain things and say, right, we can reform this, make it better, make people use it responsibly, like alcohol. You know, cut down on certain aspects of the drinking culture. The fucking nightclub culture is absolutely toxic. and I was a bouncer for 5 years, so I know firsthand how shit it is.
Right,
But there's ways of doing that aside from just completely banning it outright.
okay, but why wouldn't you ban it outright if you don't care about liberty?
Well, because it's pragmatically, it does generate a lot of money. That's the simplest answer for that. Is you do get a lot of tax from it, you do get a lot of money from it, and there is a case for people drinking alcohol responsibly. There's, I mean, you can see with the sort of the prohibition efforts in America, people will still use. So you're never going to properly ban it outright entirely, but it more comes down to sort of practical cases. There is money to be made off it. There is money to be made off it. It's not prohibited in the Bible. And, moderate alcohol use, responsible alcohol use isn't the problem. The problem is excess in this case.
Well, it's either you ban it altogether or you don't ban it, though, because if you take it in moderation, then it contradicts each term. It's either going to have a society where pretty much nothing is illegal except for the responses that you get from the community, right? So let's say, for instance, somebody...
How the fuck did you work that one out?
No, let me explain this. Let's say somebody tries to kill somebody, right? The natural response to that is self-defense, right? It's not a law. It would actually be a law and authoritarian if I said, well, you can't defend yourself because somebody initiated force. So it's a completely different situation here with say, alcohol or sex outside of marriage or any of these things. So I don't understand this. Are you saying, well, there's a sense of liberty in this society, like people have to get better on their own? Well, why call yourself a fascist or a Christian fascist or anything like that?
No. You're completely misrepresenting what I'm saying. I'm saying there is an aspect of it that needs to be dealt with. Banning it outright isn't necessary. Okay, if it was necessary, then I would say, yeah, ban it outright. If we had a massive problem with alcoholism, like they do in Russia, I would say, yeah, look at sort of prohibition. But the aspect of drinking, I mean, no one is going to look at someone having a glass of wine or having a pint on the weekend as being, a massive detriment to society. Now, what is the point of banning something that you can earn money off? This is the thing. Is not every single aspect of fascism will require an iron fist to enforce. Certain things can be done by education, by enforcing that the parents, and a lot of this shit does come down to the parents, enforcing that the parents teach the kids not to go out, not to fucking get so drunk that they're passing out in the road. Okay, saying this way, if I wanted to disincentivise it, I would start putting massive fines on people for drunken disorderly behaviour. I would make drunken disorderly behaviour, instead of being a case of, you get over here, you get, I think it's an £80 fine and no criminal record. I would make it so that drunken disorderly behaviour couldn't lead you ending up with a 6-month prison sentence for repeated offences or something like that. By your logic, we would have to basically ban everything. This is not what fascism is about. Because it's like the case of the minute prescription medication can be fucking abused. You can go to the pharmacy and get something that has codeine in it. You can abuse the fuck out of that. You can't ban that.
You see, this is
why...
There
are solutions that are not complete. This is the thing. This would be the state intervening and the state using its power. But the way the state would do it is not always going to be the case of 100% crackdown.
See.
It wouldn't be pragmatic. It would not be pragmatic to try and ban alcohol completely. To crack down on the drinking culture, yeah, that's fine. Do that. But to completely ban, especially when you look at the financial, the alcohol industry is worth absolutely billions.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because you could just substitute that over for something else. People will pick up something else that's probably healthier. Especially seeing that's just traditional economic building, all right? You don't worry that just because big market industries that are privately owned, by the way, make all this money doesn't mean that the people will actually be making money themselves. So I see no purpose.
They still pay tax, though.
Yeah, but what's the point in tax? What's the point in tax if nobody gets the money themselves, where's the taxes going to go to? Like, in a fascist state, what do you do with taxes?
Would you pay for your government? This is the thing, is I don't know where communist economics, how you work things out here.
So you're
Because
paying
things
your
cost
so
money.
people are
Everything
paying
is gonna
people are
money.
paying to be organized. So essentially people are paying to be oppressed. They're giving their money so you can take more of their liberty. That doesn't make any sense. No one would ever do that.
Which is why you don't give them the fucking choice. Why is this that everything is a choice?
Because it's either
What do you
everything.
think would happen if there was no laws? Do you think everyone is going to get on?
Yeah, actually, I
Be
think
honest, do you think if we
it can.
all of a sudden look at that film, The Purge, right?
No,
You
but
make
The
all
Purge-
triangles for 12 hours. Do you think everyone's going to fucking sing Kumbaya?
Actually,
They're
The
not.
Purge is an immensely unrealistic depiction of what would actually happen. Let me explain what actually happened if we had The Purge, right? Pretty much nothing.
Oh, go on, please. Tell me how everyone's going to.
It would be immensely. It would be immensely underwhelming. Okay, people would be disappointed by how little they could actually get away with. Because, as I pointed out before, if you try to pull a gun on somebody, you're going to most likely die. Okay, you're going to do that. It's the same with real life. Whether or not police are here, whether or not there's a military enforcing anything, whether or not the state is active, is irrelevant. Somalia was stateless for many years, and there wasn't a particular uprising in.
Wonderful place to live.
Yeah, no, yes. Well, now it's not a wonderful place to live, and it wasn't there either. But I mean, you're referring to it now.
Tell me when Somalia has ever been a fucking good place to live.
Never. I never said it is, but it wasn't particularly bad then. Okay, it was just the same then. It was.
No, Somalia has always been fucked. Somalia has had no state, so it's been governed by warlords.
It wouldn't
This is it.
change
They're-
by
they're
the fact
de
that the government
facto
are
government.
warlords.
No, but even then, extra governmental, whatever. Anyone with enough fucking weapons will seize the power. Even if there's no state, someone is going to seize the fucking. Yeah, they were starving people out. That was it. That was the resource in Somalia. Was essentially the food aid. So if you're gonna give me an example for a stateless society working, I don't think Somalia is the best choice.
Well, I can give you many in a minute, but I'll just go back to the Purge for a second. The only benefit people will get is that bullshit laws won't exist, right? So, there's not going to be like all these property taxes or landlords that exist in this realm. And there probably won't be private owners. No, there probably won't be private owners.
The first crime everyone's going to do during the purge is not to fucking pay their income tax. Come on.
No, I'm serious. That's
Come
what's
on,
going to happen,
really.
and nobody's going to be exploited by private owners. Nobody's going to bow down to them at all. And there's also nobody. You're not going to be paying rent either. But you might pay a community tax. If you start forming communities, then they will collect taxes, right? Not by the state, but by the workers controlling the means of production. What would happen in a real life purge is that pretty much nothing. Would there be an increase in crime? Probably a lesser. It would probably actually drop because people would arm themselves and protect themselves and be more cautious and actually form communities and communes based upon people they like. And so you would have ideological segregation.
So if there's crime somewhere like, let's say Detroit, where Detroit is high crime. Now there are strict gun laws in Detroit. There are strict curfew. I think there has been a curfew in Detroit at some points. I don't know. I'm not all that on my American history. But if you take somewhere that's an absolute shithole like Detroit, and then you removed laws and you removed police, you're telling me crime would go down?
Probably yes.
Okay, if you remove laws, then there is no crime. So
You know what I mean
right.
by
crime
crime.
as we perceive it.
Yeah, you know what I mean when
Right,
I
so there
say
won't be more murders.
there won't be
more gang
there will be more
activity.
crimes that should be committed, less crimes of things that shouldn't be committed. I would assure you that, because people would be firstly there wouldn't be a poverty incentive to commit crimes in this situation, and there also wouldn't be
No, because everyone can just take whatever the fuck they want and make everyone else poor.
no because they're
Where
not
do
making
you factor that in?
they're not making poor because they can already start their own work and they can start their own
Okay,
communes.
so what if they rob the elderly? The
It-
easiest target would be an old woman who's undefended.
Isn't
So
that
that's okay then.
is
There's
it
no
not
law
different from the
against
current legal structure? I mean, people will be there are always going to be people that will defend the elderly. There's always going to be people that will defend the young, and they're probably going to protect themselves because they know they're targets here. They're targets in our current society. People, the same can happen there.
Yes, and there are laws against it. There are protections in place. This is why we have a police force.
Yeah, there's many societies that existed without a police force. An example would be the Second Spanish Republic, which was a successful anarchist society and commune, in which there was no military police forces, and the rebel faction which fought against the capitalist fascist monarchists were actually irreligious and worked together as a community in which they controlled the means of production for themselves, and they didn't have any state. The laws there were
Where
just
is
put
it
in
now?
place. It was taken over by the fascists, of course. That's the nature of imperialism. It's not a
You
example of.
broke up. You broke up.
Oh, I
Oh, you
said.
stopped talking or you broke up. It sounds like you cut off.
Oh, sorry. I said that the Second Spanish Republic was taken over by the fascists, not because their ideology failed, but because imperialism took hold.
Okay, so everyone was happy, yeah?
Yes, very happy.
So everyone in this utopian republic of yours that you've given me as an example, why were the fascists able to seize power?
They're able to seize power because they grew larger in numbers and because they had more allies. And because the rebel faction were trying to branch off and create their own society.
So, just to clarify here, we're talking about the Spanish Civil War.
Yes.
Right, okay. And how holistic do you think this Spanish, what was it, this republic of yours was?
Holistic? What do you mean?
Do you think this occurred from your people? Did you think this occurred from an actual Russian and Bolshevik influence from across the waters?
This was before World War II.
I know, and Russia became communist after, what was it, 1918?
Yeah, well, it
Now, when the
didn't.
Civil War come, you say that the fascists had their allies as well. The fascists had more allies.
Well,
This
we're
was a
talking.
fucking proxy.
We're talking about Catalonia. We're talking about Catalonia. Look at its geographical place in Europe. It's it's nowhere close to Russia. It's a different situation.
The Spanish Civil War had logistics from all sides, though. The Russians were bolstering the communists and the anarchists because it suited them to have something like that on mainland Europe. And Russia is mainland Europe. You know what I mean? A bit closer.
Well, yeah.
So there was allies on all sides, though. That's not the argument there.
Sure, but this is
People
all
weren't
historical
happy. People
determinism,
joined
though.
the fascists. Yes, but people tend to become fascists when they're not happy. A society that functioning well doesn't turn to fascism.
But isn't that a testament against fascism? It appears that's the case. And any society doing well will keep what it's doing.
No, because it will always reach a point where it isn't going to work well enough. This is what Mussolini said. There will get a point where men get tired of liberty. This is the thing. As time moves on, problems arise. And when you can set up in times of peace these systems of classical liberty and the right of the individual and all that, and then the more it drags on, the more you see that it doesn't work. And this is how fascism arrives. And then you roll back to that reset point. It's like when your computer has a virus and it's absolutely fucked. So you do a rollback.
Wait. There will be. There will be a time where men are tired of liberty. That sounds ridiculous. That sounds beyond ridiculous. Sounds like somebody who's really full of themselves.
No. It's not ridiculous at all.
How is that?
This is the point. You point to this all-consuming liberty that's never actually properly happened, and you hold this up as an ideal. And we look at the problems in society now, and the problems in society now aren't because of too fucking little liberty. It's because people have been allowed to get away with whatever the fuck they've wanted. The lack of regulation in economy, and here is something we could probably agree with, has allowed for monopolies to be. I mean, look at Google. Look at fucking Google, right? This freedom, this economic freedom, which, I'm arguing about economic freedom with a fucking communist, but we're talking about economic freedom, which has allowed monopolies to have the same power as governments. What fucking freedom is that?
But
That
that's
is a
the
freedom I'm quite fucking sick of. That is a
see
liberty that I'm sick of.
I disagree
I'm
with the
sick
idea.
of every which.
I disagree that counts as freedom. I don't consider that economic freedom. I consider that economic oppression. All right. I
Well,
don't.
no, because they had the freedom to do it.
Yeah,
This
well,
is the
I could
thing.
say somebody has the freedom to own a slave. Does that mean that the slave is free, or that's an exercise of freedom? No, it's not an exercise of
Okay,
freedom.
so you're going to say that slavery is wrong, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I can agree with that. That's fine. There's something we can agree on there. How are you going to enforce that without a law? What if in your little utopian society there's a inter-community conflict?
Okay.
Maybe one side decides they want a slave.
Okay. One side
Who steps in and says, no, you don't get to do that shit?
Well, somebody would have already
The
formed
community who's benefiting from it?
a commune.
No, but then,
somewhere.
hang on. This community then all of a sudden has a resource of slaves because your whole thing relies on everyone getting on, and that's not going to fucking happen.
Yes.
You know, even smaller scale society, even if we go back to sort of prehistoric man, we still found things to kill each other over. Your whole system relies on a sense of cooperation, which isn't there, is what I'm saying. And the fact is, the glue that binds people together are the laws, and the laws come from the state.
Then you would have to explain to me why there's been empires of tens of millions of people, and the fact that human society and civilization has existed for most of time without states.
What do you mean they would have been? Okay, easy. When you're on a smaller scale, when you're tribal, you do not need a unifying state. You do not need a whole state for 3 or 4 tribes. Now, when you reach a critical mass, I don't know what that number is, but there will be a case of critical mass where 2 tribes unite or whatever, where you will need a central form of government. The more people you put together, the more crime, more disorder there is, and even not just crime and punishment, you're going to end up with matters of resources. You're going to have start, working out who's doing what. So then that would be probably a tribal council. You would end up with a hierarchy, definitely, whether it's a council or just a single chieftain or whatever. But eventually, the bigger it gets, the more you'll need. One man can't do everything. That's a government. That's your start of a government.
No, look, I understand.
Okay, sorry, no, that's your start of a council. And then that council would eventually grow to incorporate more, to do more. Then that's a government coming. Now, if you want me to pinpoint the exact part in history where a government came, I don't know. I haven't fucking looked that far ahead.
Well, okay. On the topic of seeing things from the perspective of fascism, I'll quickly point this out, right? The idea of fascism...
Acknowledge my last point, though. Acknowledge my last point there.
Well,
when you're moving on to something else, well, this is what I'm saying. That's your answer right there.
Right, but
If you ever want anything, right? Okay, if you ever want more than a tribe of, let's be generous and say 100 people to unite and actually make something, you're going to need some form of leadership, and leadership relies on someone having more power than others. Otherwise, there's no point of a leader. If you've got say someone wants the tribe to go to war. If every other fucker has equal power to overrule him, then he's got no power. There's your hierarchy. Someone's not equal. Someone's above the rest. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's natural. You see it in the animal kingdom. There is hierarchy. There is hierarchy everywhere. Hierarchy is one of the oldest
would completely
orders.
disagree with that statement. Demonstrably disagree with that statement. There's quite a lot to go into there, actually, about animal behavior. All right, well, look...
Okay, animal behavior, right? I don't like the animal behavior argument for the most part, because I think if we have to revert to... For the most things, it's like when people say animal behavior and homosexuality and that kind of thing. I don't like it. I don't like having to go back that far. But when I'm saying natural, When I'm talking about a natural hierarchy, it happens. You have pack leaders in wolves, lions, any sort of pack animal. You see it in herbivores. You see it in fucking mice, bees, wherever you like. Hierarchy is one of the most natural things there is. It's one of the most natural orders there is. And even from species to species, look at any ecosystem. There's always a balance in these ecosystems. There's never too many predators, too many prey, but there will always be something to sit atop of this hierarchy. There was a case in Africa where they deforested an area and they killed off a load of venomous vipers. Because they were building, I think it was a coal mine or something. So they deforested it, they killed all the snakes, they drove all the snakes away. They ended up with plague because the snakes were eating the rats were spreading plague. They ended up with actual bubonic plague outbreak. It killed quite a few people. This is the thing. This is hierarchy. It's a natural order. It is one of the most natural things there is. And this is one of the worst things about the whole anarchism and the whole communism thing, is you're enforcing something that is just completely against not even human nature, just nature in general. You're trying to enforce something that just completely flies against, well, everything.
Okay, well, I was actually...
That's my point there.
Well, I understand your point. I was actually making this video recently, which I kind of talk about hierarchy. I'll link you that when it's done, but I'll talk about my points anyway. So, you may or may not know about this philosopher, but he's a very important philosopher. And if you ever been in any communities of anarcho-communism where that is discussed, the philosophies that have influenced anarcho-communism, then you'll know of his founding father, of the ideology's founding father. That is a man named Peter.
I hold very little. Tell you now, if we're going into philosophy, I hold very little value on philosophy.
Not a religious philosophy, or...
No, philosophy in general. It's just coming around to the point where you need men of action. There's a certain point where you can sit and you can talk and you can philosophize, and certain philosophies in themselves become their own religions. But go on.
Alright, there was this Russian author, a very important man, named Peter Kropotkin. And Peter Kropotkin wrote a lot about his time in Russia and the inequalities and unfair structures that he saw, and the hierarchies between employees and their employers, and how these people would produce bread over and over again. Sometimes in a week's work they could produce 100 loaves of bread. However, when paid by their employees, they couldn't afford a single loaf of bread. They were given a little bit of coin, but despite the fact that their work held heaps of labor value, they weren't given any of that value. So essentially, the private owners tear people, the workers, away from their actual work. So why is somebody who's actually producing getting paid so little compared to somebody who is not producing, and instead, in a very authoritarian and judgmental manner, supervising and telling other people what to do, despite the fact that they're not a baker, and they have no idea how to bake bread, and they're probably terrible at instructing others to do their job, despite the fact that they don't have the job themselves. And so he talked a lot about hierarchy in the animal community. He was a naturalist, in a sense, meaning that he studied insects and he studied animals. And what he found was some interesting interactions between ants, for example. He would look at ants and how they formed as a colony. Heaps of ants would swarm in order to, say, collect an apple core together, and retrieve that back to their nests, or their queen. What they would do is that they work collectively and own things as collective property. No one ant would become a billionaire. When's the last time you've seen an ant billionaire? When's the last time you've seen an ant go out of the natural habitat and stand out? This is because when you've seen one ant...
have a caste system.
When you've seen one ant, you've seen all the ants. They all behave the same way in the hive mind, because they do collect for a queen. And yes, that is the queen which does rule them. However, they do that for the sake of passion, since other ants can go off naturally and form their own colonies, which is why you can actually find completely non-hierarchical colonies within ants, and you can find them working by themselves. but they do it for the sake of survival. If you were to toss a dead rabbit in their way, they would go to that rabbit or go to any dead bit of meat, and they would collect collectively, right? So here you would have them even sacrifice themselves for other ants in certain situations in which other insects, such as spiders or bigger ants or worms or whatever, approach them. And you would have them take sacrifices for the community because there's a naturalistic, homogeneous need for being with other ants and for following their own tribe. And what he found was that if human beings were to behave like this, there wouldn't be the issue of wage labor, right? There wouldn't be the issue of only working for the sake of wages and not for the sake of productivity or contributing to society.
Let me just stop you there. You can't have a propagating ant colony without a queen.
What do you mean?
You can't have an ant colony. You can have something that will last maybe 2 or 3 weeks until they start to die off. But you can't have an ant colony without a queen.
The queen doesn't control anybody, though. They only retrieve food for the queen. And part of that has to do with reproduction, the chances that the queen will mate with them. So they're doing that for their own self-interest and not because they're commanded. If they will, well, some will get it, but you have to understand how many ants there are. So in this situation, it's a bit like, well, I may work for somebody, I may serve my life for somebody, and I might be in the position of, well, I'm the giver and the other person is the receiver. But that was a consensual choice which did not come through social cohesion. Simply, it was a choice I decided to make for my own self-interest, or because there are a lot of people who have self-interest for others. So it's both self-interest and it's both altruism. Altruistic in the sense that you're working for other people and not yourself. But you do gain from it, morally or, enjoyably, whichever. So I don't see a hierarchy forming here if the ant queen does not have control over them, because the ant queen cannot fight back against this colony due to its large size.
Right, but as I said, you're not talking about a colony. You're not talking about a structure. You're not talking about an organization. You were talking about 10 or 20 ants.
No, thousands, hundreds to thousands of ants.
Then, right, okay, but they can't propagate without a queen. There will be a queen there then, because ants don't lay eggs on themselves. They need to fertilize the queen.
Well, there'll always be women and men.
Where there is queen, there is hierarchy, because ants breed in caste. You know that.
Well, there are certain roles, like certain roles, different demographics in place.
That are slightly different, yeah. But ants do. There are genetic morphs. There are alleles that form certain things in caste of ants. Soldier ants tend to be bigger. They have fatter heads with stronger mandibles. You'll find them in a colony with worker ants.
Well, on that, you can kind of make the same for women joining the army. I mean, it's not necessarily about strength; it's just about numbers or accuracy or something like that.
No, women shouldn't be joining the fucking army. That's that's simple.
Very much disagree with that, but whatever. Moving on from it, the ant colony can function without a queen because rogue ants who do go off on their own adventures. Their sense of not continuing the ant colony only has to do with reproduction. So let's say, for instance, that all women are housemaids or whatever, housewives, and all men are adventurers or workers or something like that, and that's a very traditional set of gender roles. If you have these sort of gender roles for different demographics, you haven't necessarily created a hierarchy. It's only when you take different demographics and value them at different percentages or different rates or whatever, and you have a clear favoritism towards others in which you've developed a hierarchy, or in which you have certain people who command others. So if women consent to certain roles,
go on.
If women consent to certain roles, then that's not necessarily a hierarchy. But if they do want to become more dominant or masculine or take on more, traditionally male roles, and they're given the freedom to, then you wouldn't have a hierarchy. You would just have statistical generalizations you could make.
Right. So go on. Right. So you're saying that letting women take on certain general roles, that wouldn't be hierarchy?
It wouldn't be.
That wouldn't.
Yeah.
Enforcing that they don't would be hierarchy.
Yes.
Well, I don't disagree with you there. I'm not saying at all. I mean, I don't see where we have an argument there in saying that, the state telling women not to fucking. Okay, the state banning women from joining the army, for example, or joining frontline policing.
Women in the second Spanish Republic actually were a part of the army, and they served very well, and they made up a large percentage and portion of the militants fighting against fascist regimes.
Frontline fighters, yeah.
Yep, frontline.
You're telling me that a woman is going to be lugging an artillery shell at the same effectiveness as a man, is going to be fighting hand to hand at the same effectiveness as a man, is going to be able to carry the same pack weight, even a woman.
They had a very large contribution, actually, and without them a lot more people would die, because they stopped fascists from killing a lot more people this way. If you didn't
How did that work out? Who won?
Yeah, the fascists won. I didn't deny that. No, that happened.
Who won? The fascists won, and you're telling me now that women were such a great contribution? Well, if they were that fucking great, why did the fascists win?
Due to numbers and due to the fact that the entirety of Spain was against a tiny corner of Catalonia, so of course they're going to win. I mean, if I said to you, who would win in a fight, Finland or the entirety of Russia? There's no debate there. What?
Fucking Finland did quite well as it goes.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. What are you talking about?
Well, okay. Hang on. Let me find it. Oh shit! What was the conflict? I think it was the casualty rate on the Russian side was about 20 times the Finnish side, and I think the Russians backed off from. I could be thinking of somewhere else, but Russia did try and take somewhere over and got absolutely fucked.
Well, out of context, I don't understand. Like, unless you refer to a specific event in which I can just look up. But
I'll find it. Hang on, I can't remember. There was a lot of battles throughout history. I'm not going to know it off the top of my head, but I know the Russians got absolutely hammered by a much smaller country when they tried to invade it. So let me find it. Yeah, you can continue. I'm just going to look this one up.
And so you had in the militants and the communes and the unions formed within the Spanish Civil War on the rebel faction side, you had people who were completely non-hierarchical positions because a libertarian socialist society had been achieved in which the workers controlled the means of production and were in complete control over their own workplaces. So in this situation, a non-hierarchical society where people were just, you can look at people different. I mean, understand this was the 1930s. So of course there were still traditional gender roles. Of course it was probably a very conservative, progressive, but generally conservative time back there in old Catalonia. But still, even then, you could still have traditional values, but be politically progressive. And that was, and I think that's what society should be today. You can still have traditional roles, but if people don't want to do that, then they don't have to fall into these categories.
All right, 2 seconds. It was the 1939 Winter War.
1939 Winter War. Let me look it up.
There you go. Hang on. It's going to have to be a Wikipedia link just for the sake of brevity. Look at the loss compared to the finish.
Right. Well, to be fair, though, that's not the entirety of Russia. I mean, if you send in, even at most, 360,000 troops,
Logistically, you're never going to have a full open war. 360,000 troops. And bear in mind, there was up to about 750,000 troops. That is a hell of a lot.
Well, yeah, well, okay, but I mean, it's kind of irrelevant to the point, which is that you would understand why a small area of Catalonia would be crushed by a massive, very forceful, backed into the corner kind of situation, where you have to take Catalonia because it's part of Spain. Unlike Finland, which is not part of Russia.
There has been siege situations. weather it at least for reinforcements to come on. Some of the Crusader battles was like that, surrounded on all sides, and we managed to pull out. But I don't look with the Spanish Civil War. All I know is there was ended up very much a proxy war. Now you can say it was this utopian of Catalonia. No, it was probably going to happen, and everyone was fucking playing their chess pieces there. I don't think it's fair to say that, oh yeah, it was because of just a fascist uprising, nor would it be the case to say it was just because they were, I don't know, what was your reason? What, they were somehow jealous of the Catalonian independence?
Well, they didn't want no Catalonian independence is happening now. Okay, because that's a modern thing. Yeah, at the time they wanted to succeed.
No. What I'm saying, hasn't Catalan had sort of a historical separate state within Spain? They've got their own flag.
Well, they do, but so do states in Spain. So that's irrelevant. It's not officially considered a new country.
Aren't they
no.
Okay, easier way to put it. Aren't they more like Scotland in England?
Well, I think it's
Scotland's
more like
part of the United Kingdom.
I would say
its own country.
Well, I would say more like Northern Ireland. I think that's a better example.
Okay, right, fine. I get you now.
But it wasn't officially a country, though, unlike Northern Ireland. So it is still the campaign for independence. I don't understand exactly why, because unless they're becoming a socialist society, I wouldn't understand the purpose of it. But maybe that's the case. Maybe I'll look more into it.
I've got no idea what the fuck is going on there either. I'm not sort of off topic. I don't really understand it either, because they're talking of, we want freedom of governance and all that, and they still want to be a part of the EU, and it seems to be financially, they want a separate tax rate from the rest of Spain. That's what it looks like. Give me 2 seconds, I just need some water.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm back.
Well, okay, so some isolated instances, but I could pretty much say the same thing about Benito Mussolini and his fascist Italy and the Italian Empire, and imperialistic, ultra-nationalistic, and fascist authoritarian states like that.
Stop you there. Fascism doesn't require imperialism. This is what my problem with Mussolini's fascism and Adolf Hitler's fascism was. The move towards imperialism was stupid. We had an empire. For the longest time, it served us well. It became a fucking headache. You should be more focused on your own people than an empire and giving yourself more problems.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
Yeah. You're not going to hear me defend imperialism at all. I would have a defensive army. If I would bolster our military, if say I got in charge tomorrow, our military would be heavily bolstered and it would be fucking pulled from whatever pointless theatre of war they're in now.
I like this sentiment. I like this sentiment. Look, I'm all for allowing you to have your fascist state if that's how you're going to be. In fact, I would be giving it to you, because anybody that's against.
Okay, off thing here. Did you think I was an imperialist fascist? Did you think I wanted to spread it by the sword?
Well, I mean, okay. Look, if I didn't tell you like I was an imperialist, but if I went on about how I believe that the state should interfere in people's lives, despite the fact that they're not any business of the state, and I think you should go out of your way to tell people how to behave.
I've got an actual quote from Oswald Mosley of the British Union of Fascists, where they say about you got to ask this exact same. It was along this sort of exact same line of questioning. And he said that if everyone was fascist, if everyone was fascist and they did it properly, there wouldn't be any fucking wars. Everyone would be more concerned with their own countries and their own people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
There.
Yeah. Actually, you could make the argument that like fascist Italy was anti-nationalist.
Yeah. No, this is the thing. Is Mussolini? You see, Mussolini's a bit of a tragic clown figure to me. It was like he saw what England and France had in Africa, and he thought, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And yeah, out so well. It was doomed from the off, and it would have. I mean, even if the Axis powers had won World War II, I'll tell you now that Mussolini would have likely relinquished Abyssinia within 10 years. It would have worked out. There's not enough benefit. There's better shit to be doing. You know, this is what you have with an empire: is one, you rely that you can subjugate people that are vastly, vastly different from your own.
Yeah, it's true.
Expect it to be productive. I mean, this is the thing: is if you went into the Amazon and you found Amazonian tribesmen and you thought, okay, these will make good auxiliaries in the army. Law of unintended consequences. So you give these people guns, they're probably going to fucking, try and fire them like a bow and arrow or something. I mean, there's been a couple of times, like World War I, we used to put the Algerians in the front trenches because there's something peculiar with Africans where the Algerians were fighting without gas masks. While the chlorine gas was going off and our guys' fucking lungs were melting, the Algerian auxiliaries were able to fight without gas masks, without, having any major negative effects from the chlorine gas. It's weird.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, you can't claim to be for nationalism. You can't claim to be for caring for your own country when you're too busy caring for other countries. And you're going to have to supply them economically in order for them to even be made part of your empire, or else they'll just be terrible additions.
Exactly. To get a country into a state where, say even a richer African nation like Nigeria, so even sort of make them efficient enough to become a contributing part of the empire is going to take a hell of a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of time. And it's a lot of time spent on your own people.
Yeah, it does. That's why it doesn't work out. And that's the same with the Soviet Union. It was a bad decision because it just came about its fault. When you come colonizing a bunch of European countries, a bunch of countries in Asia, it's no surprise it went to its demise.
It is. Empires are unsustainable. Well, empires are unsustainable these days. Back when everything was a bit more simpler, then you've got more chance of holding an empire. Yeah, definitely. But even then, the amount of rebellions throughout history, the amount of fucking hell, just go for any of the sort of the sagas of Rome, and you can see how an empire is good for status. It's good in the short term for the country while you've got all these resources and that coming in. And then you've got the fall of Rome, and then what sort of happens to the empires. Same with the Soviet Union. A lot of these sort of Soviet satellite states are still absolutely fucked from their time of occupation. Empires, no, I'm never gonna be defending empires really. But yeah, that's something we can definitely agree on.
On the. So I'll just put something from the fascist perspective, right? If you see a unhealthy behavior or a bad behavior, you can observe that it's clearly harming people. The immediate reaction you get from a sort of selfish altruism, you don't like to see it, but you want to care for people and you see it as selfless in a sense. You want to ban that. And so you ban like kind of mild things, you ban heavier things, you get to the point where after you've banned some unhealthy behaviors, right, you have to ban everything, or else you would have to ban nothing in order to be logically consistent. Because this is the thing with moderation.
I don't see how you're getting that. You ban certain things to. If there are certain behaviours that you don't want in a society, like drunkenness, you look at ways. See, outright banning everything. It's like the state intervening is not always going to end up in the even a fascist state. The state intervening in something doesn't automatically mean it's going to go to the extreme. So, if we see a case where, let's think of an example away from sort of drinking. If we saw a case where all of a sudden there was an uptake in, struggling for an example here. I did have one. You've caught me tired. Okay, no, fuck it. We'll go back to drinking. We see that it's a problem. We also see that there is benefits to having alcohol in society. It's decent sort of social and all of that. You know, you've got to let the people have something. You cannot fucking ban every single little thing because it's just, yeah, people aren't going to have that. So you look and you see where the problem with drinking is, and it lies in the excess. It lies within the people that don't handle it responsibly. That's where you look to punish it. There is no point in implementing an absolute ban, costing yourself a fortune in taxes, pissing off people. You're going to be closing down a lot. You're going to punish proprietors like pub owners. Pub owners are already struggling in this country because of the sort of, well, pubs have become a franchise now. You've got Weatherspoons over here, and Weatherspoons has become like the McDonald's of pubs. You know, you've got these conglomerate breweries that own most of the pubs, and they can afford to charge a lot cheaper, and because there's no regulation on it. This is what I'm saying about freedom. It's their freedom because they're not regulated, but everyone else suffers. So now, like the sort of little local pubs now have to charge £5 a pint, where Weatherspoons can charge £2.50 a pint, that kind of thing. But then you're going to be punishing everyone. Of a few. Fashion not about that. It's preventing this action in the first place. So even if that's something as simple as, like I said, increasing police presence, ensuring that bars are stopping people from getting to the point, because it is actually law over here that you can't serve someone who's visibly drunk. So if someone's falling about, throwing up in the pub, you will be refused service. But it doesn't get enforced. The sort of state I've seen some people in nightclubs where I've literally have to carry them out. And when I say carry, I mean put them over my shoulder, dump them on the side of the road and call the ambulance, carry them out. That's not enforced. If that was enforced, if the establishments were fined, punished for letting this happen, and the people themselves were then, because it's public drunkenness does cost the NHS a fucking fortune as well. Alcohol-related injury, alcohol-related illness, yeah, it is pretty expensive. You can look up the stats. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a significant amount of money. Now, there's a case of sorting that out, and then you remove the problem. Then it doesn't become a problem anymore. You know, no one's looking at someone getting home from work and then opening a beer in front of the telly, or maybe having 3 or 4 beers, getting a little bit drunk with some friends, not causing any trouble. No one's looking at that and saying that's the problem. This is the thing with fascism, is it doesn't have to be, it's completely unambiguous. You will know what is expected and what is not. You'll know what's expected of you. You know what's against the law, what isn't, and that's it. There's no vague definitions. There's no vagaries or subtleties in the law. But that doesn't automatically mean that the extreme scenario is going to always be the correct.
Okay, the extreme scenario. We're talking about you seeing things from. We can't go this far, but we do need to go to an extent. I just want to make sure that's what you're advocating for, right?
What I'm saying is right. The solutions, you're not always going to need the most extreme solution for everything. Just for the fact that the state is stepping in and then enforcing a consequence doesn't automatically mean it's going to be the worst consequence. So I would have harsher penalties for theft, and I would have the death penalty, but obviously not for theft. That wouldn't mean that if I catch someone shoplifting that they're going to hang.
No, but I get this. I get this though. This
means-
is just penalty. This isn't like making things illegal. Like if you're talking about somebody committing theft, well, obviously people are going to respond to that, and I understand if a state exists, then it should do its best to make this stuff illegal. I'm not against harsh penalties.
Yeah, but penalty in of itself. I mean, when there's no proper deterrent, it's like if the penalty for something, for example, theft. Yeah, we'll use theft. If the maximum penalty is 5 years, and you are very, very, very to get that maximum penalty unless you've been arrested about. Oh, I've heard cases of people that have got arrest records of about 80 times where they've still only got 2 months in prison for the same offence. You know, you can't ban theft because it's already prohibited by law. So what do? You enforce the penalty. You make the penalty something that deters. The penalty doesn't become a maximum of 5 years in prison. The penalty for maybe a strike-free offence becomes 10 years in prison.
Yeah, well, I understand that. I understand that though, but I'm talking more about
you can put into law. You can put into the law the things that, behaviours you want banned that are definitely sort of intrinsically damaging or harmful, where you can. I mean, if there was a cult that sprang up, like the Japanese cult that did the Tokyo subway attacks, if a cult like that sprang up and then you banned them and outlawed them because they're fucking dangerous, then yeah, fine. But when it's something like the example you gave, where it's there is a problem there, it needs to be rectified. But that's not a great solution, just to completely ban out.
But here's the
Same
thing.
with gambling.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, just like take gambling as an example. I just want to quickly point this out. As an economic thing, I think gambling shouldn't be allowed, only because it's an economic thing. But I can talk about that at some other time.
Preys on the poor. Gambling preys on the poor. Well, you've got like the sort of high roller gamblers, wealthy ones, but for the most part, gambling, yeah, it does prey on the poor. It's like usury. I would definitely fucking outlaw usury.
Well, I would outlaw gambling, but let's not talk about gambling.
Yeah, I would outlaw gambling, or I would restrict it, to a point where it can't become a problem. So you may as well outlaw. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would talk about this from, let's pretend it's not an economic issue, right? Let's say it's an issue of somebody doing something, just a general issue of somebody doing something that is clearly bad for them. They start gambling, they have all this money, one night, they're broke, all right? They've lost it all. But I believe that, if it's, because we're not, just pretend it's not an economic issue then I believe anybody making these sort of bad decisions has the right to, because if you use state power or you use some kind of authoritarian power, then they're never going to have a change of mind, will they? They're never going to learn from their mistakes. They're never going to become better people. They're never going to mature this way, because there's no incentive for themselves to improve. There's just incentive for others to improve them. And not through like disenfranchising like bad behavior, but through force, which does not prove a good message to anybody. It's just going to make people want to do things more. Bad things more.
Okay. Isn't the deterrent of the fact is if I do this, I will go to prison?
Yeah, that's a way of saying, well, that's how you disincentivize it. Yeah, sure. But that's not going to make anybody... It's not going to create a society of high trust, is it? No, it's going to create a very cold society.
Here's the thing, is that if you want to stop this behaviour, I don't care if they change their mind about it. If they stop doing it, then you've won. It doesn't matter if they're pissed off that they can no longer take their benefits money they're meant to use to put food in their children's mouths and then put it in the slot machines, and then the family's going to have to rely on food banks. The fact is that behaviour will be stopped. Now, I don't care how much of their liberty that is infringed, or how pissed off they're going to be, or what they think of the state. The fact is that they have not done that behaviour. The outcome will be better for them, and in that scenario that I gave you, it would be better for their family as well.
Okay, well, how do you, if you walk into a room of 100 people and then you examine them individually, how do you tell the difference between good quality people, according to your own judgment, and bad quality people, if the state is interfering in their own behaviors? You can look at people's behaviors, and you can look at the things that they've done in the past, good things, bad things. And because of the freedom to do these things, we can judge them now. And we could say, well, is this person somebody trustworthy?
Well, because you're talking... Yeah, well, if you obey the law... I mean, there's laws that I don't particularly like over here that I make efforts to fucking obey, because I know I'll get fucked if I don't. That's not a measure of someone's trust. I mean, when you go... Your personality, what you purvey in an interview, just because you've got no criminal record does not automatically mean you're trustworthy. So, say from a job interview scenario, it doesn't mean that, it's not a matter of trust as such. Your interpersonal reactions, unless we're talking about some Orwellian nightmare where the state can literally read everyone's mind, that's completely different. And I don't even bother debating that, because it's impossible. It's an impossibility. But the state isn't going to mandate your social interactions beyond the point of making sure you're not going to be doing things that are illegal. That's it. It doesn't have to be the case of, you're still going to be able to make your mind up on one. I mean, that's not a failing of the state. That would be a failing of yourself. If you can't speak to someone, have a conversation with them, and work out whether they're trustworthy. I mean, like, I don't talk to someone, and the first thing I wonder is, have they got a criminal record? That might not necessarily be what I'm judging them on, or what I'm using as a measure of trust. This is what I'm saying. There's, it's not complete control. It's about authority control. There is a difference.
Okay, but in a completely stateless society built upon a community in which people belong to certain communes and certain communities within the society, the actions that will be observed by members of these groups towards a certain individual will be able to determine whether this individual should be with them or not. If you have a very authoritarian society which is controlling of the people, then this individual, right, well, all their actions and everything they've ever done, whether they're successful in life, whether they've got a job or not, these sort of things, we cannot determine, is this person the kind of people we like to keep in or root out? Is this the same with job interviews, or the same with getting people employed in any sort of sector?
This is the thing, though, is you shave. When I go to a job interview, I make shaved, I make sure I'm wearing my suit is well pressed. That's not necessarily what I'm going to be wearing the next day. Everyone modifies their behaviour in society. That's a fact.
Yeah, but they do that. But there are some people who would be... They're like, if somebody didn't iron their shirt and dressed up terribly for that day, then we can objectively say, okay, this isn't somebody we should want in our company. If we had fascism where everyone would do the same thing, then there's no way to determine whether somebody is of good quality or bad quality, whether you like this person or not, because the way they behave, the way they speak, the way they act, and their actions are all the same. They're not human beings. They're just puppets. They're all controlled. Unless you don't have individuality.
The judgment of people comes from our own interaction with them. Now, if you're with someone and they tell you that, I don't know, they smacked their wife about the last night, you're going to turn around and you're going to work out that this person is probably a piece of shit. You don't need to... That would be an interaction within itself. You wouldn't have the state telling you, you can judge that yourself. It's not hard to work out. Because if you look at someone walking down the street, you don't know if they're good or bad. Most of our social interactions are like sort of 2 words, except for the close circle of people that we have.
Oh, okay. You're
going to know who you're going to want your friends to be because of the way they behave with you.
Okay.
It's going to be a formal scenario. Not everything is going to become a formal scenario where the first thing you are asked is, have you followed all the laws to... That's wildly impractical. It's impossible, and it'd be fucking pointless.
As an example, though,
Still,
let's just say it is illegal to assault your wife, all right? In a fascist society, well, I don't consider it an exercise of liberty. I'm not saying that, but in a society where everything is illegal, right? We can't turn to this person because they haven't committed a crime. But in a true liberated society, right, there's a chance that they have or haven't. In this fascist state, somebody might still be willing to go through with that if they had the chance. Or there might be like a psychopath who's only obeying the rules, right? So we can't determine, is this a good person or not? Would I ask them, well, would you do it if you couldn't? But they're not allowed to have freedom of speech, right? They're not allowed to say this anyway, so it's irrelevant to me. What I want to know is I could judge people by their actions.
When we say freedom of speech here, there's going to be a hell of a lot of difference between you can't speak freely between each other, etc., etc. Between what I would regulate in, taking away speech, the sort of things I would not allow, and what the government's. Between each other, the government generally doesn't give two shits unless you're a seditionist or a terrorist. There's this illusion that all governments want to know every single little thing that everyone is doing each of the time. Not the case at all. So, interaction between each other, that's not going to be regulated because you can't. There are too many people. If you make up your mind that you trust someone or you don't, that's fine. But the fact that someone is willing to stick within the law, maintain the law, it's like I look at people sort of within my faith and that. And, I know that we are following the same code, the same practices. We slip up, that's fine. That's not something we judge each other on per se. But that's not an indication of trust. That's not something we need to indicate trust with. It's like you don't see everyone's criminal record. Only select certain people can see a criminal record. It's not public knowledge. You make up your own mind of who you trust. The state isn't really going to give two shits about what you're saying in private. Your interaction with each other, and at the end of the day, if it does stop the behaviour, then it's a win.
Well, look, I don't
know. Okay, in a society, in your anarchist society, where anyone can say and do whatever they want, you still don't know if someone is a murderer.
Yeah, but we can judge we can judge their opinions and ask their thoughts on certain things. At the very least, we can get the general sense of a person. We can kind of make these assumptions.
You doing that in a fascist society? You meet someone in a pub or an event or something. You talk. What is to stop you saying? And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, there's going to be surveillance and secret police and all that shit. No, once the Muslims are out, that's it. I think terrorism is going to be, terrorism isn't going to be the problem it is now. Simple as that. So what's to stop you in the privacy of your own home? Oh yeah, okay, so what do you think about X, Y, Z? There wouldn't be a law in place, by the way, to say that you can't criticise the fucking state in the comfort of your own home.
Maybe you could get something out of them in these instances. However, they wouldn't be...
Okay, put it this way. A bit segue there. The Gestapo in Nazi Germany relied on and their influence and what they actually did was greatly, greatly exaggerated. What the Gestapo actually did. So this sort of secret police network, this was the only thing it would rely on. Actually know what was going on sort of interperson to interperson. And that... looking logistically, that is a massive, massive, massive undertaking, and it is really not right. To know that the bloke down the road doesn't particularly like the government is not going to be worth the resource or the time to deal with it. You're not going to have enough. Put it this way, there's going to be contrarians in every society. Not everyone is always going to be happy with everything, and some people just like to moan whatever the fuck's going on. You are going to need a hell of a lot of prisons to lock all those people up. So, providing they're not out in the streets, ranting and preaching sedition against the state or uprising against the state, that's what I would crack down on. But
Well,
person to person, this is how people are going to trust each other. Is going to be much the same way we do now. We get to know each other, you talk. And the thing is, I think trust would definitely increase as well, especially in a theocratic fascist society where there is more focus on the community, where there is more emphasis around the church. It's like the villages in the countries in like the sort of countryside in Britain, not so much the cities, but villages are built around the church. The church isn't only a place of worship, it is a community hub. You know, that would come back. I would make definite efforts to make sure that that sort of sense of community came back, because it's a sad thing that we've lost it. Just not to the same degree of community as you would like. But yeah, go on. As you.
well, on the idea of community though, if look, I don't know who said this. Maybe it's just some quote I found on Google Images that isn't real, but somebody said something about if people only avoid doing immoral acts or bad acts for the sake of not going to hell, then you've created a terrible society, or that you've created a hell on earth. Because then there's no judgment of the individual quality of people, or the morality, or what they're willing to go through. And what I want is a society where people don't do terrible things, not because they're going to be prosecuted for it, but because they just don't do it. You can't have a high-trust society or a society with high levels of social cohesion when you have this sort of hierarchy and these sort of laws, which infringe upon people's rights to at least choose whether they're good or bad. If you've ever seen the film A Clockwork Orange, you'd probably understand what I'm talking about free choice and human nature to decide, so people can decide upon their fate as well.
Okay, and then what when that fate impacts others? Someone has the choice to decide whether to be a murderer. They take it. They know that there's no great disincentive. They know that they are in a position where they may have manipulated people that they can trust, and they know that the consequences, you know, there's no sort of thought of eternal consequence or even sort of temporal consequence. They're not worried about the consequence.
Now, if people were free to do whatever they want, then there'd be a much lower.
Okay, so if he pulls out a fucking weapon and kills 30 people, where's their freedom?
No, well, I wouldn't call that freedom or an exercise of freedom. What I'm referring to is that in a society where people do have freedom and they do have the right to pursue their own interests, then there'll be a lesser murder rate. There'll be a declining murder rate, in fact, because people the usual reason
they for a declining murder rate, and then all that's going to happen is you're going to have other crimes. The problem with this is you don't even account for things like desperation. We're talking about murder in a completely murder's probably not the best one to use for desperation, but theft. What if there's a food shortage or something? What if there's an economic downturn? Not everyone's going to steal to eat.
Well, I wouldn't.
People will steal for fucking recreation. People will steal because they want something and they can't afford it. People will steal because of, I don't know, for a fucking laugh.
This is a different economy, though.
Okay, so in a communist thing, you're removing choice anyway. You're a communist utopia where no one has got the choice to better themselves and earn more money. And I'm not. You're making me defend a capitalist system, which I don't particularly like.
No,
you're removing
because
the
people
choice for them to actually better themselves economically to the point where them and their children will never have to do this. They will never have to engage in this.
Yeah, but what do you mean better themselves economically? There's no point in which you can just better yourself when you've already had all your needs met. If you mean to the point where you would hoard wealth to extent to where you wouldn't even need it, like say somebody who owns 20 houses but uses one of them, then that's a pointless choice. It's a worthless choice. It doesn't actually give more freedom to the people. It just denies freedom for other people to own a house because you're hoarding all the wealth.
Okay, but that individual's contribution, you don't get 20 houses unless we're talking about some inherited wealth system. You don't tend to get to a position where you can earn 20 houses without work.
Well, I
it's
mean,
not me and you. If I got to a position where I could earn 20 houses I can tell you now, I would have worked somewhere, or I would have made a product or an innovation or whatever, and I would have done something to earn it. This is the thing: is wealth is not. It's not something that happens by accident. If I want more money, I do more. It is really that simple. If I want to go on holiday, I will do more overtime, so I've got more money to spend on holiday. That is a freedom. That is a freedom to do that. I can work my basic amount of hours and have less money. I can live on it, but if I want to do a few extra shifts here and there, pick up a bit more money for it, that's my choice to do that. Now, if I am required at work for an extra 5 shifts overtime in your society, what is my incentive to actually do that?
You're not going to be given any extra time to work.
So, sorry, what?
You're not going to be given more hours.
What do you mean?
You're not going to work overtime, but you're not going to be rewarded any differently.
So you're not going to work overtime. So what if you have to? What if it's
a
situation where there's been food poisoning in the office and, 5 or 6 people have gone sick. You're the only person that can come in. Otherwise, someone's going to be stuck there 24/7.
Why would there be food poisoning? This isn't like one of those private market things where you can just put anything in the market. Makes no sense.
No, this is what I'm saying. What if it's an essential service?
An essential.
Say you're working at a power plant, and you have a massive wave of sickness that goes through the power plant.
There's gonna be people that are dedicated to their community.
Qualified engineer.
There's gonna be people who are dedicated who are engineers, since I don't think that much of a population will be needed in order to fix these problems.
How many fucking people? How many people are you gonna have? Okay, what about hospital? What if an outbreak of listeriosis goes around the hospital? You lose 5 or 6 of your best surgeons. They're laid up ill. They can't work. You've got a surgeon on standby. He's going to have to put in the hours. He's going to have to really... What, you're going to grab people from the community who just happen to be qualified cardiovascular surgeons, yeah?
Well, this person doesn't...
What labour pool do you think you're actually going to have?
If this person isn't going to put in the effort, then they're not going to receive from the community. You do know that, right? We're not going to receive their fair due like anyone else, because this is something that people consent to when being in the commune.
They don't work overtime, so they starve to death.
If
I don't work overtime, I have a little bit less money. If they don't work overtime, what? The community stops giving them food. How is that a free society?
No. You do get your basic.
It's economic hostage, mate. It's exactly the same as capitalism. It's capitalism where you don't have the freedom to buy your own shit. That's all it is. If someone refuses to play ball and go and cover that extra shift where they are desperately needed, maybe they're not feeling well either.
No, I'm not going to force anybody into anything, though.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying to you. If I refuse to do overtime, it is literally in my contract that I can't be fired for refusing overtime. All it happens is a personal freedom that I will have less money at the end of the month.
No, we won't give you anything less.
I will have slightly less money.
We won't give you any less property. But we would say that in this situation...
So what, less food?
No, we would say in this situation... No, you wouldn't be given any less anything. We're saying in this situation,
would you be considered...
If you don't help these people, right, then why should they help you if you're ever in need?
So this is just going to be the Stakhanov scenario. Stakhanov, you know about Stakhanov, the coal miner, yeah?
No.
Soviet Union, World War II. I think it was Vladimir Stakhanov. Everyone had a quota to work to, and Stakhanov far surpassed it. Got held up as a poster boy all over the propaganda posters. Stakhanov. Ended up with a little faction. I think they were the Stakhanovite. That was the sort of reward for hard work. That was the sort of reward that the state was giving for hard work. Yeah, that's the state. But then that was a hierarchy. it created a hierarchy, and it would have done the same thing in anything, because you have the hard workers and the people that will cruise by and do not a lot. That's
Well,
hierarchy.
there's always going to be situations in which certain systems,
You're
no matter
always
what
gonna have a
economic
hierarchy.
system.
This is what I'm saying.
No,
to
but
you.
you
is
don't
you're
need a
always gonna have
hierarchy. You can have non-hierarchical societies. Many tribes were like this. Many big civilizations were like this. They didn't have any tribe leaders. Many ancient Native American societies were structured
Where
this
are
way.
they now?
Well, of course they don't exist in the current day, but that's because
Who did better? These ungoverned tribes, people that banded together under governments, under nation. Which ones endured?
the ungoverned tribes, just not in the context of conflict between giant colonial empires invading them. Of course not.
The Indian. Okay, we'll go with Native American. They were killing each other very, very well, way before the first settlers ever came. They were wiping each other out at greater efficiency than the white man ever managed.
Yeah, but that wasn't organized. I mean, there were some tribes, right? So that you could say some were organized, or there were some kings. But I'm talking about the major empires or something like that. That you had up to 10 million people in some of these.
An empire without an emperor.
You know what I mean, like a society that is advancing, right, and is growing and is developing at a very fast pace, and you didn't have a hierarchy.
Okay, so even if they didn't have a de facto government, as what we would say it now, like a system of government and cabinets or whatever, they would have still had leadership, or they would have had castes. They would have had soldier castes, warrior castes, whatever. Priest caste was a big one, even in sort of ancient BC times, there were priestly castes. There was still hierarchy. These did not come about through everyone working as community spirit. It is impossible to think that, say, 10 million people can ever do anything aside from either just start fucking each other or start fighting each other without some form of order. Without order, there is chaos. There's no freedom, it's just chaos.
But when you give people order, you give them the orders to kill one another, and you give them the orders of imperialism. This is what states will do. They will crush other people, and they will crush people in different foreign lands, alright? If you have a disorganized community, there's going to be less incentive to do so, because you're going to be working for each other's needs.
What about unifying tribes then? Even if we're not going from land to land. Sorry if you hear clicking as well, I'm just responding to fucking email. Yeah, if you have, even if it's not imperial, you still have to subjugate tribes. Otherwise, you're just going to have factions of tribes. You cannot have 10 million people in one fucking locale doing whatever they want and expecting anything productive, not even with regards to an empire. Even with regards to that land, they're not going to get anywhere.
Well, see, here's the thing with organizations. If your tribe begins off very small but starts getting traction and builds massively in quantity of numbers, then you can just have a democratic turnover of people who say, we believe in this, or we have this set of values, so we're going to travel our own way. And so then the massive tribe breaks up based upon whatever identity politics they hold, or whichever kind of cause of nature they wish to pursue. And then it's going to go down the line. You're going to have more of the tribe break up, or maybe more join, but and they breed or whatever, and it keeps going. Weaker. Right? They go different ways essentially because
if you lose half your tribe, you get weaker. And if
you lose half,
strong enough for them to splinter apart.
But we're not talking about an empirical society.
Yeah, but if that division is enough to break the tribe, then what's to stop that division from going to war?
Well, they could go to war at any time. I mean, it's just that they decide. Well, I mean, any society that's bigger than them can crush them. So this has nothing to do with values. If you live next door to,
it doesn't need to be an external society. It can be another tribe. It could be the tribe that they splintered because of their democratic group has decided that red team wants to do this, blue team doesn't. That splinters the tribe. Now, if that's strong enough to splinter the tribe, and essentially, let's say 50-50, If that division is enough to cut the tribe in half and half their strength, what's to stop it from going to war? It doesn't have to be imperial. Unless there's a fucking chieftain, and we've had this, I know we've definitely had this discussion before, but unless there is a chieftain or a unified tribal council or whatever that stops that division. And the way you stop that division is by mediation and enforcement. You would enforce the standard.
Well, the thing is, even if you don't split off, though, or you don't create a certain unity of people who democratically decide on which way they decide to go, there's always going to be some neighbor next door who's gigantic, and they could crush you if they wanted to. So I don't see any difference here. You're still going to be outnumbered, and you're still probably going to be going to perish in the face of battle. So what you can do is that you can find groups who, because everyone did this, I mean, that would be perfect. You could find people who would split off until they find a perfect tribe, and thus they would have incentive to work for one another. And this can happen in a society where there is no leader, but people, just like anybody outside, like their friends, or they're going to spend on something together, and they're doing things in economic circles, just like you would in a group of people. People decide on what's best together. It's not a voting system, but it's not a dictatorship either. It's just naturalistic this way. Wouldn't you have a society based upon the laws of nature, which is where, if you're out with a group of friends, for instance, there's no raise your hand to do this. There's, well, what should we do together? What's the best decision? And then they all huddle together and they work it out between everyone. And it's equal, and there's no hierarchy here.
We also know there are standards. We also know there are things that we don't do. We know that there is not so much a hierarchy of each other, but this is where the state becomes a hierarchy. We know that this is where the state becomes a chieftain. We know that if we go out to this pub and we get really fucking drunk and we start a fight, then we are going to end up getting arrested.
Well, yeah, but you can.
It doesn't need to be a hierarchy in the sense of every single interaction with every single person. That's not the case. This is not the case I said earlier. There doesn't have to be, like when we went into about high trust, low trust society, it does not need to be this hierarchy in absolutely everything, but it will always be overarching. And as a religious man, hierarchy is inescapable. Whether you acknowledge there is a hierarchy, always going to be a hierarchy.
But I think it's Christianity which is the root of all this, because you want to bow down to a god to make decisions for you, and you want to see that as objective.
No. It's not about God making decisions for you at all. You're into the determinism argument there, which is a whole different debate.
But what? No. Okay.
No, if God made decision for you, there'd be no sin. So I don't know how you work that one out.
No. I'm all right. So you're making
assumption.
You're basing your morality, right, and your decisions on life based upon scripture from the Bible, and you're basing that upon the will.
All of them.
Okay, but you are
all of them. Some things I know is just wrong.
Oh.
Some things, even when I was an atheist, have been the exact same as when I was a Christian. I was pro-life when I was an atheist.
Oh, okay,
I wasn't always a Christian. I wasn't raised a Christian.
But you missed my point here. I'm saying that there is a clear hierarchical relationship, right? So you have the commander, which is God, and you have you, right? So he's servant. It's a slaver relationship here, because you're clearly bending down to them, and you're listening to their laws, and they're not doing the same for you. They're not returning anything in terms of favor. It's just, well, you presume something good happened to you, therefore it must be God or something like that.
No. Not at all. It's not favour on this earth, so to speak. It's right. This is the problem we get into, is you're trying to understand the nature of God in a term that, man can understand. You're trying to ascribe human characteristics to God. Just don't bother. It's like you think of the master and slave. Yeah, it's not quite like that at all. It's a case of God is God, God is eternal, God is there, whatever anyone says. It doesn't require human. What's the word? It doesn't require human acceptance. It's arguing about the facts of the universe. That's the way I see it, anyway. You'll get theologians that will argue different points on it, have different perspectives, but it's arguing a universal truth, and it's as simple as that. Therefore, if you believe there is any deity, or even if you believed in aliens, say you believe in a race of super intelligent aliens came down and spunked into the primordial ooze, and then that's how humans were made, or whatever.
Yeah, but you don't follow the laws, though. That doesn't mean anything to you, though. You don't follow what they say. You know, you're not a servant to them.
Okay, but if that, well, yeah, there are people that think that is the case. There are people that think that is the case. There are people that think that aliens are God. There's a specific cult. What was the one that they all drank the poisoned Kool-Aid? They believed that aliens were their gods.
Right? It wouldn't matter because you believe in a book, and you believe in a bunch of scriptures, which are based upon some feel good analogy to become going to heaven or something like that. We could say Christianity and all the Abrahamic religions are.
You actually know? I don't know where the fuck you're getting the idea of what you think Christianity is. Now, okay, even if you don't believe, tell me where the Ten Commandments, aside from maybe the one that you said about having no God other than yourself, tell me where they are a detriment to society. Tell me where those laws are a detriment to society. Tell me where charity is a detriment to society. Tell me where the virtues. I thought you would have been right on board. The whole it's easier for a camel to enter the eye of a needle than a rich kingdom. You know, where is your problem here with that? Look at the virtues of charity.
Okay, well, firstly you
Look
have
at all through the New Testament, even the New Testament, the virtue of charity. The virtue of charity is a constant theme.
Well,
the ultimate hierarchy is God, but you look after your fellow fucking man.
Well, yeah, I'm all for somebody looking after their fellow human being. Never said I wasn't.
Okay, so hang on. The ultimate hierarchy is God. The scripture, it's just words in a book that we follow. One of the golden rules is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So what's wrong with that?
Well, the 10th commandment.
Follow this hierarchy for it's of no benefit just having this hierarchy and this and the other and this kind of thing. So, where is thou shalt not kill? Where is that a detriment?
Because
and there are even allowances in case of self-defense. That does occur.
No, because the Bible's very, very much in favor of killing certain populations and certain demographics, so it's completely hypocritical. They mean to say, thou shalt not kill another devout Christian.
No. No, this is some Quranic bullshit here. Tell me in the Bible where it says thou shalt not kill unless they're a Muslim.
No, I never said.
Tell me in the
Islam
Bible
didn't exist back then, so that's a pointless thing to bring up.
Okay. Tell me where it says thou shalt not kill unless they are a Baalite. Tell me where it says thou shalt not kill unless they're an Aramite.
Well, wasn't there some talk about the Israelites and the Egyptians or whatever, or something like non-believers? There's probably heaps of quotes from the Bible. I remember heaps of verses, but I can't bring them up now. I don't remember.
Well, no, because you're making the assertion that it says we're fine to kill certain groups. That's bullshit. Now, where it does say is God says, I will turn my face from them. I will punish them. I will deal with it. You don't. You fucking behave yourself. I will deal with it.
Wait a minute. Didn't the Bible say that you should put homosexuals to death? Actually, I explicitly remember them saying that. It says that. No, it does say that.
Yeah,
so
that's a law.
So that's the law. So
and
it's
that was reformed. That was
So
one of the
you.
reformed laws.
So,
Stoning became outlawed pretty quickly in Christianity. The time of Jesus, this is Old Testament, we're talking Old Testament Jew shit, yeah? And the
yes.
old laws that applied were suffer not the witch to live, stone the gays, stone the adulterers. New Testament reformed it. This is why we follow the New Testament law. I have not come to destroy the law, I have come to amend. These things are still sins, but the punishment has changed. The sin doesn't change. It just means that now God can deal with it, we don't enforce it. Or if we do enforce it, we don't stone someone.
But yeah, but that's still you following a hierarchical order, which you cannot
I can
prove.
give you other reasons why.
Huh?
I wasn't particularly keen on the gays while I was. I don't need scripture to tell me that certain behaviours are fucking detrimental.
Well, the point I was bringing up is that somebody who would defend a very oppressive state, or the state having heaps of intervention in everybody's lives and curbing civil liberties, well, it would make sense that they would have to adhere to some monotheistic religion in which you clearly have a creator, or somebody who rules over the world.
Why would the state that's giving itself all power want to subjugate itself to God?
Well, because the church and state are.
No, there would be church influence in state, but what if the state wanted to do something that was, say, eugenics, for example, that would completely contradict? Why would the state want to do that?
Would that contradict Christianity?
How would that serve the state? How would that serve the state? What, eugenics?
Well, I mean, you brought up eugenics in particular.
Abortion and selective genetics and that kind of.
Well,
there were quite a few religious arguments on why you don't fuck around with that.
What? That makes no sense. I mean, you talk about abstaining from certain sexual acts, and then you say, well, eugenics is not for me. Well, to clarify, eugenics could simply just mean abstaining from certain kinds of breeding purposes, or from certain kinds of things that you can pass on to your youth, your offspring, by damaging your body, right? You abstain from doing that. That's all it can mean.
That's not eugenics. Not smoking during pregnancy is not fucking eugenics. Come on, don't misrepresent me.
Well, it's mild. It's a mild variant of eugenics. I mean, you mean like hardcore.
Oh, okay, then so we'll encourage everyone to smoke during fucking pregnancy.
I didn't say encourage them. I just said you can't ban the behavior of certain individuals, because that's not allowing them to be judged as individuals. That's just making them all one and the same, despite the fact that people are clearly different. And you would want them to be formed around one kind of value, not just a bunch of misguided values. I mean, I'm not saying you can disincentivize it.
Listen, here's the thing. I'm not interested in their feelings or their fucking personal beliefs. And this is what I said as well. If you caught me earlier, I said you cannot force someone to believe something. I would not attempt to force someone to believe something. What I would do is enforce a standard, and a standard that you can't disagree with either would be a decent standard for society of charity, following the commandments, etc. I would enforce that as being the standard and the basis for the law. We're not talking about, stoning gays in the fucking streets, because Christians haven't been doing that for a very long time, and there is basis that it was outlawed. Even the death penalty is a massive point of contention. Just in general, it's still a point of contention.
Well, historically, and the way it's viewed from a modern revisionist perspective, of course, that doesn't change the fact that you will have to adhere to a bunch of laws in the Bible or in any kind of religious book that will have to control people inherently. Because if you say that you're not for
Well,
converting
all
people's...
laws control people. Any law, secular or otherwise, is going to control.
Yeah, but you would want the state to adopt these laws, would you not?
What? Every single law in the Old Testament? No.
New Testament, whichever kind of cherry picking you want to do.
Every single law in the New Testament, I told you, there are not so much laws as we would give them as laws. We're talking about guiding. A lot of it is guiding. What is law is law. You know what that I've told you. 10 Commandment laws, they would be enforced. Where applicable, they would be enforced where it comes to things that aren't matters of faith. Can't enforce matters of faith. Usually,
Yeah, I don't like the idea of I don't like the idea of thou shalt not commit adultery when that goes against people expressing themselves how they feel. I mean, if somebody's cheating on you, like this brings back to judging people by their actions. How would you know they wouldn't cheat on you?
For fuck's sake. This is the thing, is you're so worried about the individual, you don't fuck about the victims of this. You do not seem to care that there is no such thing as a victimless crime. If a man goes and commits adultery and there is no legal recourse for it, he can split his fucking family. Men can be inherently fucking lustful. That's just a part of being a man. Yeah? If there is no legal recourse, if you think fucking Vikings go and pillage and rape and this is their sort of religious thing, it's just indulge your
Yeah, but this
fucking desire.
But if you believe this,
then
then
there are victims. Do you not want to disincentivize something that is going to split a fucking family?
I want to disincentivize it
not?
through the social body. I don't want to disincentivize it through law or anything like that.
Okay, but the social body now glorifies it.
Well, they.
So what do you do there?
They do in this.
I'm not talking about stoning the fucker to death, but what I'm saying is fine him. Fine him, name him, put him on a fucking register. Whatever.
No, absolutely not. There should be no punishment.
This is what I'm going back to.
No, there should be no punishment for divorce or anything like this, or breaking up or cheating on people, right? That's the whole point of love, and that's what gives you the adventure. Because people are free to make these decisions, so you can tell, is your partner a good person, or are they not? No, I don't like that society at all.
But you're still free to make a decision. You're just going to suffer the consequences.
Well, they shouldn't suffer the consequences, especially if that means that they're less likely to make this decision. Thus, you wouldn't be able to judge them properly. You wouldn't be able to see them as a human being. You would see them as being controlled.
I don't give a fuck about that. I'm not interested on whether or not they wanted to cheat. It's the fact is, did they cheat? No. Good man. Were you tempted to cheat? Yes. But did you? No. Good man.
Well, if somebody was tempted to cheat, right, then that's already a red flag in that situation, the relationship between two people. So, while they can't cheat, well, you can't really determine whether or not they want to, can you? You can ask them, but nobody's going to just admit that. Can they divorce? Can they divorce in this system?
What, under a theocratic fascist government? Yeah, they could.
Okay, so they could divorce, right?
Yeah, you could divorce.
Okay, but you can get married to begin with, so...
It would be disincentivized. It would be... The divorce would be set in such a way that you are really going to think twice on divorce. But yeah, divorce would be allowed.
Okay, well, no, I mean, you can disincentivize it through the community if you want, but I mean, not by law. But you would still allow them...
Your community is just...
What were you saying?
You're talking to me about stoning the gays and all that, and your communities is exile. You want unappointed judges exiling people.
No, I don't.
Communities that don't conform to the way you want.
No, I'm just saying there's a reason people split off into their own tribes when they were already part of a bigger tribe.
Okay, so you're going to end up with a tribe of paedophiles if that's the way things go. They exile a group of paedophiles from a tribe, and now you've got a tribe of fucking paedophiles. Is that what you want?
Isn't it
Is that
better
your
than
utopia? Then?
isn't it better than the pedophiles being mixed in with the tribe you want?
No, it's better than the paedophiles being rooted out and hanged.
No, I don't like that system. I don't like that rule of thumb. I think
remove them completely. You don't remove society. You remove them completely, or you bang them up in fucking prison where that's it. Whether or not they're together, fine. They can't hurt anyone. They can't do anything. They can't hurt. You do the same with murderers. You do the same with all of the undesirables. You fucking exile. You don't allow them to form their own little group. You put them somewhere where they are away, where they cannot influence, cause damage, or anything to anyone else. That's common fucking sense.
Entirely disagree with that. Entirely disagree with everything about that. No, I do think these people should be able to form their communities if they wish. Alright, I'm saying in my society there would be a social body of people who condemn certain actions and willing to denounce people.
So you've got a fucking hierarchy. You've got a social group of people who condemn things. Got a fucking court system. That's what a court system is.
No, it's not a legal system. It's just a bunch of people who have a certain mindset. It's not a hierarchy. Okay,
do they have the authority? Do they have the authority to remove these people?
No, I'm not saying about removing them. I didn't say that at all.
Who rounds these people up and makes them go to court?
Who? Who are you referring to?
Lynch mobs. If you've got a group of people in your fucking village or whatever, and you want them to show up to a court for whatever aberrant behaviour, whatever crime or whatever they've done against the general consensus,
the community,
you're going to have a group of people
mutually do
determine mutually.
Yeah, well, that's an agreement upon them. That no, it could be. You could say it's like a lynch mob, but it's not organized that way.
You take these people. You send 5 people to arrest this person and take them before the court, or the council, or whatever you want to call it, to avoid admitting the fact that it's actually a legal court. You get these people to do that. So what if 5 people then don't want him? 5 people say, no, you're not taking him. What the fuck happens then? Whose rights are you going to infringe on?
Well, it seems like a very
just let him go?
drastic situation which escalated from a lack of community bonding to begin with. Let's say you have a strong community and one person in that community is acting out of line, right? Okay, and then we say to them, all right, are they going to be a danger to people around them? No. And if they decide, we give them, right, because the community, they walk up to them.
I'm going to be
and
2 seconds. Yeah, sorry, I'm back.
They walk up to them in this scenario, and they say, well, you have to leave this area, we're going to exile you. And then that's something that just the community do, because they're isolating themselves from this individual because they don't see themselves as part of the same group. And then if they refuse to leave, then they're going to have to go to jail, they might be hung, something like that. And that's how any society would naturally take care of this. There's no chief. There's no chief in this situation.
You've got a law without it being called. You're into the point of semantics.
Well, what do you mean? Like, there's going to be rules in any society. That's because rules naturally occur. I mean, for instance, if I try to kill somebody, they're going to respond and they're going to use self-defense. That's just how it is. So what do you mean, rule? That's not necessarily a rule. A rule, a law is unnecessary.
Okay, and if that rule has a consequence, that is enforced, it's going to become a law.
Well, no, because the community take care of things as rules. Laws would come about with states or some kind of hierarchy, some kind of people standing and posing as authority and setting themselves up higher on the bar of position. This is not the case here. This is the case where people mutually.
But to do that, though, you need to give someone. If you can expel someone or detain them or force them before a court, or pass a judgment through a court or a council, then you are giving someone that authority, whether you like to admit it or not. You are raising someone to have that authority to do it. At that moment in time, even if it's for 5 minutes, that person And that just proves your system can't work as a fucking anarchist, egalitarian society. Because at that point in time, there is someone with different, higher powers than the other person.
No, but there isn't, because this person isn't considered part of the community to begin with. But even in this situation, just like in any society...
Right, so you've got a class of untouchables now. If they're not considered part of the community, what are they?
Well, there are a bunch of people that happen to live within a select territory, right? So let's say you got somebody from a different tribe entering into your community, and then the community say, well, no, you're not part of this tribe. We have certain values here. So we're going to have to exile you. If you refuse to leave, then we're going to have to take care of you the hard way, all right? So what hierarchy is falling there? What kind of...
countries?
Well, territory...
That is what a country is.
Yeah, well, I mean...
We're talking about a nation made of fucking different rules, different... I don't know how you think this could ever be practical.
Because it has been practical. It has been practical in the past.
No, not on the scale you're talking about. In the past, little tribes, yes. Of course. Little tribes without the knowledge and the expectation of luxury that we have now. Yeah, I can imagine that working. This tribe wants to wear blue face paint. This tribe wants to wear red face paint. Doesn't matter. Let them fuck off to each side of their woods because both of them are going to be dead by the age they're 20. Yeah, that could work.
Oh, okay. If you want an example,
to have a functioning country,
if you want like
acquired well, if you want to do this as like a feudal, medieval era society, if you're talking about a medieval fucking society where the life expectancy is 30, then by all means you could probably try it. But to think that you could ever, and I'm telling you, have you? Man to man, have you ever actually worked a manufacturing job?
I haven't worked a full-time job, no.
You've never worked a full-time job?
Not as a way of getting paid, no.
Right, okay. So you're telling me that the supervisors and all that have knowledge and they're not, they haven't earned the right to be your supervisor, they haven't earned the right to tell you how to do their job. So what the fuck makes you think you can, by your own logic, what makes you think that you know how to run a workforce?
I don't know how to run a workforce. That's kind of the point, because nobody runs these things.
You're lying out an economic plan of how work and society and tax works when you don't do that yourself.
Well, yeah, but neither does anyone who advocates for anything, really.
No, I advocate on what I do because this is my family is hierarchical. There is a set fucking order. What is expected? We have our own standards. We are very self-contained. We're isolationist. That is how it works. Where is applicable, and there are fucking expected standards of behaviour. Okay? That's quite easy. I apply my fascist thinking the way I do to my family. They know what is expected of them, I know what is expected of me, and we work together and form a cohesive unit.
Well, how's that
apply it.
How is that hierarchical?
A good well, I'm the fucking patriarch.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily a hierarchy if they agree to it. I mean, it's like if I said to you, oh, okay, well, I'll be the one...
All hierarchy is agreed to. The people that disagree with it are the ones in prison.
Oh, okay, so it's not consensual then. What you're describing...
People that disagree with a hierarchy and go somewhere else. It doesn't require your consent.
Alright, so that's what I don't like.
Family is different.
That's what I don't like, no. Because in the situations of a patriarch, I already explained this before, right? Women can take dominant masculine roles if they decide to, what are traditionally seen as male roles. If they can't, then you've created a hierarchy of who has authority in this situation, who has to say over who takes which position. That's not what I advocate for.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that in your family, right, that it's just mandatory that the roles are the way they are, or is it a choice?
The men in my family, the there's it would be, yeah, patriarch.
Okay, but there can be a
The men
patri.
have always been the sort of the glue that holds it together. Yeah.
Sure, but is that a hierarchy of putting people based upon their value in a certain slot, a certain set of order? Because that's implying that somebody who is not the patriarch is somehow inferior in this situation.
Well, it's more like your idea of society, where each of the partners that have ended up with us have chosen that, have accepted that, and they are living by our rules.
That's correct, but
There we
that's not a
go. It's more like
hierarchy,
that.
though.
It is a hierarchy. You accept a hierarchy. You accept a hierarchy wherever you go. You accept a hierarchy when you obey the law. You accept a hierarchy when you go to war. You accept a hierarchy whatever you do.
Okay, look. So say I'm a student,
If you
right?
don't want to consider it, okay, then your hierarchy is your professor and your administration of your university.
Oh, okay. So there's the teacher and the student, right? So I'm a student and I'm being taught, right? You could say that's hierarchical because it puts people in two different positions. However, what if I had something to teach somebody else, right? And I became the teacher and they became a student, and I went back and forth, right? Sometimes I would be taught and some days I would teach. That wouldn't be a hierarchy because I am able to exercise full authority and because I choose the position I'm in.
Then you've just, yeah. And then what's your point? You've just proven what I'm saying.
But
So okay, when the man comes home, he's the boss. When he goes to work, he has a boss. The hierarchy is there. There is always, even if it's not one hierarchy for every single little thing, there is an overarching hierarchy. Do you get what I mean? Just because the exact same hierarchy, I mean, a boss isn't going to treat his employee the same way you treat his woman. Hopefully.
I'm looking at the definition of hierarchy here. One definition states a system in which members of an organization or society are ranked according to relative status or authority. Hence, relative status, importance, superiority, inferiority, and authority, which is what I was talking about. The other is
Exactly.
an arrangement or classification of things according to relative importance or inclusiveness. Oh, okay, so there you go. So it is authority. You shouldn't have authority over your student. You should just have a consensual agreement upon them to be taught and to teach. So I don't see a hierarchical nature forming here.
Right. Okay. But there is still. Okay, so what? You think of it like as a contract. If you don't want to be taught by that person, you can fuck off and go somewhere else. Yeah?
Well, you can, but the boss situation is different because bosses are never necessary in order to. They don't need to exist to begin with, and because the whole point of a
Yes,
boss is
like-
telling somebody what to do when you're the one producing. So I can never see
When you-
employers as necessary.
No, you're talking about means of production. You're talking about means of production as if we're not a service-based economy anymore. Come on.
You work for
You
private
talk
owners.
about, oh yeah, they make the production. Hang on, they make the production, they make the bread, they make the bread. Who gives them the materials to make the bread? The company provides the materials and the machinery to make the bread. Now, just because they press a button and make the bread, by this logic, you should be paying the machine. Why doesn't the machine get 20%
The
of
machine's
the bread?
not getting paid because we don't need the individual to do this. We need the collective to do this. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to be a gardener, right? And I wanted to start growing some crops by planting some seeds. In order to do this, I would need a nursery. Somebody has to provide me this nursery because it's not my area of expertise. It's my area of expertise to work in a garden and to serve in this nursery, but not to build one. So someone who's clearly passionate about building nurseries and maintaining them and decides on their own, well, I'm going to start, because I know how to do this. I have the experience, right? I'm going to start my own little business, or at least something to provide for the community. Think of it as public charity or something like that. I'm going to set this up, and then somebody comes and joins, right? And this is called like a little economic commune, right? They work with the person who set up the garden, but they don't work in a hierarchical fashion. They work as equals in this situation. This is the step towards an egalitarian society. Because in capitalist society, it's the person who sets this up, they own something, right? That's their private property. What I want is that it should be provided.
Until it reaches a scale where everyone doing their own thing is not going to work. You need someone with that authority, because say you get your little commune expands. You know, you get popular, you expand, you get 5 plots of land. Now, what if someone working there or working the land is fucking it up and doing more harm than good? You go up to him, you tell him, I don't want you to work this land anymore, fuck off. And he tells you, no, you've got no authority to ask me to do that.
Yeah, you don't have authority to do that, but I already talked about this with the democratic process of people working out things together as a group. So you will be forming a group, or a group will be coming along, right, to assist the situation.
So you leave yourself... Yeah, but this is you're arguing democracy now, which is flawed as fuck.
This is a different kind of democracy.
Democracy is flawed anyway.
But you're right. Because see, you misrepresenting what I'm saying unintentionally. I know what you're trying to say. When I refer to democracy, right, in a good sense, I'm referring to not the conventional idea of democracy. The conventional Western idea of democracy is you get to vote on something, right? Very simple. Majority wins, right? That's mob rule. What I'm saying is that the people working out together, it's not based upon a vote, it's just based upon the end conclusion of what is right. And people do this as they do this in friend zones, right? And they do this in relationships to one another. Like a group of friends will do this. They don't do the voting thing. That's unnatural. They work things out by talking with one another, having a dialogue, and having these sort of conversations. And when a group come to assist a situation, and they say, well, this one person is working in the garden wrong, and we give them objective reasons as to why, we say, all right, well, you would be a danger here, and you're messing things up, so you're going to have to step away, right? That's not an authority that's mutual, because everybody's trying to protect their own interests in the situation. The person here can be provided basic needs, and they can be provided something that they can do, something that they could do good, and they can be pointed by the community to do this. So this isn't a hierarchy or an exercise of authority, it's somebody not wanting a garden to be messed up.
Yes, but you still need, whether you're giving the community or the individual the authority, you still need the ability to impose that will. Otherwise, aside from force, because the only other option is force. If he still refuses, you have to force. You have to use force.
Yeah, but this comes back to
force, government force. You're gonna have to fucking drag him off.
Yeah, but this comes down to self-defense, though.
And you're gonna have to pull him off.
Yeah, this comes down to self-defense, though, whether something is public property or not.
Self-defense property in a society where you don't think people should own property.
No,
it's not self-defense. You're talking about self-defense. No, that's defense of property, and no one owns property. So who the fuck are you to tell him he can't farm your field?
No, because there is collective property.
Can you see why I have a problem with it?
No, because this farm, this garden, right, this nursery, is collective property. It is socialized property. The case is that somebody working here and who was treated equally in an egalitarian fashion
but he owns it as well.
Yeah, but nobody owns it, though. That's the thing. It's just everyone's nursery. Somebody who's...
So then who is it for them to tell them to f*** off? He owns as much as the rest of you.
Well, he can attempt to work, but if he's messing things up, right, then,
Right, so now you've got a tyranny of the majority decides that he can't...
No, we base this upon the objective nature, or at least the closest you can get to objective, of how they're not working correctly, and by working, they would be a danger to other people.
Where you've got innovation.
This is like saying, well, people should be allowed to rape children, because stopping that is authority. Well, of course it's not.
Oh,
it's
yes, mate. Us fascists love that fucking thought of letting people rape children. Where the fuck are you going with this?
I'm saying that's not an exercise of authority. That's somebody stepping in as a means of self-defense, all right?
This is what I'm saying as well. This is exactly what I'm saying. Is when I say there are victims. Every crime that has a victim. You don't even have to go as extreme as...
I don't think so. I think it's people deciding to victimize themselves or deciding to victimize others and say, well, this personally affects me, when it's just their bogus political views getting in the way of other people's freedom to do things that are completely harmless. So I don't agree with that analysis.
Right, well, how is that doing things that are completely harmless?
Okay, somebody who is messing up the nursery is clearly dangerous. I mean, they are identified as a threat to the community, and they're simply asked politely, "Can you
What?
step
Okay.
aside?"
What if he's mentally
If what?
he doesn't have the cognitive faculty to be able to cultivate the nursery. He wants to help, he fucks it up. He has no ill malice. You can't find anywhere where he's of use in the society. Maybe he has cerebral palsy. He can't reason, he can't do anything. So what do you do with him then?
Oh, well, you don't take the Nazi Germany approach, obviously. What you do in this situation is that you compensate them with basic needs. They had their needs met, they're comfortable. You're giving them the basic needs to live and survive and actually live off that quite
But
happily.
they can't contribute, so why are they getting the same as everyone else?
Because it's not a meritocracy communism. If you're talking about a socialist society, then, well, of course, there'll be some people that will elevate themselves, right? But you can still give them basic needs, like if you know the hierarchy of needs, right? They will be placed at the bottom there, and they can still survive and live happily off of that, and be given, love and care and by
So
the
they
community.
get less. So they get less than the family man.
Yeah, they
So
would.
they get less
I'm
than, okay,
referring.
they get less than the normal healthy man.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about
can work.
socialism here. I'm talking about socialism here. It's more. It's obviously a meritocracy here. If you want to get rid of hierarchy altogether, which is what I was talking about with anarcho-communism, then in this situation, yeah, they would be treated equally, but only.
So you created a So you've essentially created a separate class.
No, I haven't
Based on
created.
what he can do, you've created a separate class.
No, because they're treated. They're given the same. They're giving everything else that everyone else is given.
Right, so they do get the same. Because
Right.
you were saying about the hierarchy.
Yeah, but
He gets
you
a
would only
basic
need.
living.
You would only need some. Cause here's the thing: you don't need that much of the population to even work in order to sustain an economy, a comfortable one for everyone anyway. So yeah, of course, there's going to be people that are handicapped and are in wheelchairs and are blind. That exists within every society. What are you talking about? There's social security benefits. There's a welfare state that already exists in capitalist countries. And people who physically cannot work, well, that's no different under communism or socialism.
No. We're talking about capitalist countries. I'm asking how it works in your meritocratic communist fucking utopia.
Well, it's not a
I can see
meritocracy
how
because
it
it's not a
works
hierarchy.
in a capitalist society.
Okay, look, I'll put this
That's
in
what
very.
I'm thinking. I'm not debating how it works in a capitalist society. I'm asking you how.
Okay, look, alright, very simple diagram to picture this in your head, alright? Capitalism, anti-meritocracy. Socialism, meritocracy. Communism, neither for or against meritocracy, simply an abolishment of hierarchy altogether. Okay, you understand this, right? So,
I don't know how you can consider.
What?
So you abolish merit in your society.
Well, you don't need merit, okay?
Everyone
if
gets the same, regardless of effort or ability.
yes.
You think that will conduce to a healthy society?
Well, sure, because the people that do put in effort and do put in merit are even doing it.
So you're not going to have any religion require people to have such faith in a society, a community of people with radically different ideas doing their own shit, that they are going to put in the extra 6 years to go to medical school rather than do a job where they sit there for 5 hours a day and, I don't know, fucking spin a crossing sign or man a security booth 6 hours a day. No. Your society, where they're not going to get any extra money for it, they're not going to get any extra recognition for it, resources for it, they're going to put in that effort because they believe in the society. A society which doesn't have a unified belief system anyway.
Well, there actually are.
You're relying on that altruism.
Well, there are some
It's
values.
Be an atheistic society, I imagine.
Yeah, well, it probably will be
It's
atheistic.
all going to be. Okay, so it's going to be an atheistic society without any incentive to work hard, do additional work, go that little bit further to become a doctor, to become a surgeon, even to become a coal miner. Which little kid in your society, without unified education, without a state or an organising body looking at what the country needs, say we need more doctors? Okay, little Johnny, we're going to have you learning to be a doctor. you're going to be a coal miner. You're going to be, fuck you, you can be a cleaner.
Okay,
You're going to
so
have to step in.
okay, so
Because no one is going to want to work a fucking. There's a reason why the shittiest jobs tend to be the high. There's a reason why you get danger money.
well, only in some
What if you want to go and
circumstances.
work on an oil rig?
No, because this doesn't compare to the overall hierarchy of money and how people earn money. And all of this has to do with private property due to these people making money off of their private property, despite the fact that no actual merit goes into this. If you're very concerned about merit, which you appear to be,
What
and
do
you
you
sound
mean merit doesn't go into it?
and you sound like you very much are, then you wouldn't have to well, at the very least you would have to abandon the current capitalist structure. Because even in this
So
society,
hang on, no, fuck you. You're telling me that merit doesn't go into it. When I go to work, I do my job to the best of my ability. I get paid more than someone who doesn't, who hasn't worked in the same sector, who has chosen a different career path, an easier career path. So there's no merit in that. There's no merit that I haven't missed a day off sick. There's no merit
you make
that
merit
I
on
made the
these.
connection.
Dude, look, the amount of money you make, right,
Mate, there's
and
fucking merit.
the amount of money the
Right,
working class
right.
make, the amount of money the working class make is so microscopic, right?
You're
That
talking to me about the fucking working class. I am the working class.
yeah, I know. That's what I just said. That's what I
But
just.
there's a hierarchy in the working class.
No.
You know that.
Oh, for
There are
God.
people that sit there on fucking benefits all day, and there's the people who work.
Okay, look. Let's put this into perspective, right? The amount of money of the
What do
working
you do
class,
when people
the
refuse
amount
to
of
work in
money
your society?
in the working class, no matter whether they're on the high of the working class or the lowest, alright, is practically non existent compared to the money made by the ruling class. Alright? Pretty much non
Just call
existent.
them what they are, and you're talking about Jews. Well, you can
No,
talk about the 1% as much as you want. The 1% are fucking Jews.
it does. Look, okay, moving on from that. Just picture this, right? Picture this.
Moving on for a second because I really need to take a piss. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to be away from keyboard.
Alright. No.
Right, I'm back.
Okay. What was the
Yeah, go
last?
on. What was you saying?
Well, wait. Where were we at? What was the last thing
We
we?
were talking about meritocracy and how work isn't meritocracy. Working for more money isn't
Oh, you're
meritocracy.
right. I was going to say something. All right. So, when it comes to competing, it always creates this stress. You could especially see this in universities and in these sort of college places where it's I gotta get this degree at this time, or I've gotta make it at the pace society wants me to make it at, and a lot of this anxiety created from people who are trying to compete and trying to get more money and trying to pass good grades and not take it at what is comfortable. So you probably heard the term to each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. And if you had a society based upon this for what somebody's able to handle and what they're able to put out, then you'd have a much more enjoyable world for people to roam in. Now you may not understand this, right? And I understand because you're not supposed to. Same with me for some instances in certain job positions. But there are a certain population of the world that really do enjoy working. And they would enjoy their work a lot more if they were given good conditions, good payment, and were in control of their own work and not have their creativity and innovation completely crushed by bosses. And this is the thing, because you can campaign for workers' rights. So, like, say, we were talking a lot in school about how harmful and how dangerous it is to work in certain labor fields, certain labor jobs, and how, these people working these jobs get killed quite often. There's so much death that's created by this because there's no workers' rights or protection for these sort of people. They don't have ethical stance for going about these jobs. So what could you
Well,
create?
that's
You
not true.
what?
We have a whole health and safety executive in
Oh,
England.
I was talking about
There is a
Australia. I was
whole
talking about
stand.
Australia.
Right, okay, so I'll give you an instance where it can work. Excuse me. So we have the health and safety executive in England, and it is rigorous. If a business is found to be in severe violation of it, they will shut the business. And there's criminal prosecution, fines, economic sanction. I'm going to mute myself while I cough. 2 seconds. Oh, we'll be getting a cold before. Yeah, anyway. There are economic sanctions, and there is a very need to enforce these standards. Even with things like office jobs, employers are required, if you're at a certain point at a screen, to allow the employee to go for a walk, have a 15-minute break every, I think it's 2 hours or so. They're allowed to have a break away from the screens, because prolonged exposure to display equipment is going to fuck your eyes up. And that's enforced. That is rigorously enforced. So there is that point, there is a unifying standard for health and safety, and that will apply to things like coal mines and that. But some jobs are just naturally more dangerous. Even if you follow health and safety standards to the letter, accidents do happen.
I do believe that there should be the community intervening or the state intervening if there are certain businesses that do violate that of the customers and that of its workers. This is something we can agree on. I just talking about how there are ways to improve under a socialist society or on any variation of socialism the conditions in which workers work in. And I'm talking about health and safety measures and not putting people in unethical conditions, especially if we're talking about pollution factories and these sort of markets and these things that, when you work in industries that affect climate change, yeah, they're completely unethical and immoral and damage the climate and the environment and the people that work in these sectors. And so they're terrible jobs which shouldn't even exist. But they do not for being productive to society or to contribute, but because it gives an excuse to make somebody rich for the sake of profit exclusively, not for productivity. So what I was going on with about is that you can have a lot of people working in really good conditions and find passion in their work, and there's certain things that can be made a job and can be used to sustain the world around them. So, for instance, I like gardening, and I enjoy the time I did spend gardening, but I don't currently have a garden in my house. Not a big enough garden. There's no place to, plant this kind of stuff. So I would have to work with the community. Somebody would build me a nursery, and in exchange, just like everyone, this is mutual. This is what I'm talking about. I would be the one to work in that nursery, and that would be a promise on my part. And I would be the one putting in heaps of hours and planting seeds and taking care and watering and fertilizing and moving things in soil and all that kind of stuff. And I did enjoy doing that with my temporary jobs. So that's something I could have easily gotten a job in, but because there's no society collectively working together, and of course the only time there is any collectivism involved, it's only for the part of the private owner using their individualism to exploit somebody else because they're doing it for the sake of profit and not giving them their right over their own work. So you can have a small population sustain the entire economy for everyone, and their incentive to do this is not because of profit, but because they enjoy doing it, and they will have their needs met anyway, so there's no point in earning money. So in this anarcho-communist utopia, you have people who enjoy the work, are passionate about the work, have good workers' rights. The community is helping them get these jobs, and they're giving them this employment immediately. They don't have to waste all this time trying to find a job and being in and out of work and going to all these interviews when they can just go to the place that they've been told to go to, and they can just begin working day one. And you have so much incentive.
Some jobs people just won't want to do.
There are some jobs that people wouldn't want to do, but you would have to what's an example of something pretty much nobody would want to do?
Sewage worker.
Okay, on the topic of sewage worker, because that would still account to a small population of the total population. People that would do it would probably enough people to provide.
It's still a huge industry.
Well, it's still a huge industry, but you would have to look at it from an ethical perspective and wonder, well, is it productive? Does it help the society around? Does it contribute to society? I mean, I would have to examine these things individually, and I would have to tell you, is the reason so many people work?
Miner.
Yeah, okay, we could say coal mine. I mean, unless we could substitute it for some other kind of more environmental substance. But let's say coal mining is important, right? And we need people to work in this district. I don't think coal mining is that bad, personally. I think that people do like to do that kind of hard labor, but they get kind of satisfaction out of it and push themselves to these sort of limits. Because if you train somebody to be the kind of, well, I can take this, but I can do it for my own self-gratification. I mean, that's fine. You can build a society where there's social cohesion around that. There's going to be people who will sacrifice themselves for the community, but they'll get self-interest from that, which is how all sacrifices work, and they'll enjoy doing it. You're going to get these sort of people.
Yeah, but the amounts actually, you need a lot of people, especially on a countrywide scale. You have to rely on the fact that there are, in fact, that many people.
Well, you do. You have to take into account the population.
And what comes a point of education? If someone's going to end up in a coal mine, what's the point of teaching them art, history, biology?
Oh, well, I'm not going to teach them nonsense things.
Well, biology's nonsense, is it?
No. Okay, you know what I want in the school system? I want the students to control their means of instruction, not the teachers. So they get to choose which kind of
kids.
No, because you're missing what I'm trying to say. All right,
I'm
so I'm
5 years old. I wanted to be Batman.
All right.
I didn't think I want to be a fucking security.
See, this is something we should agree on, and when I explain it, it'll be more clear for you to understand. All right. So this is how it works, right? The schools are owned publicly by the teachers, and they're owned, by the society around them and the community, and they're regulated in that sense, right? So what do the teachers do? Well, the teachers find something that is productive, a career that is useful, and that will, get certain people into these fields. That isn't. It's not like, oh, I want to be Batman. That's going to be a career. No. So they pick out like a set of careers, and then the students, right? So no matter what it is, right? The kids will decide what kind of career which is productive and which you can actually enjoy, and which is very fair and probably low hours anyway in this kind of society anyway, what career do I want to enroll in? And they should be given the choice here, because no matter what they pick, it's always going to be reasonable. And there's always going to be a fair distribution who go to different sectors and find different jobs, because they're given the creativity. So if you want to like be really interested in agriculture and horticulture, or you want to be an architect, these are productive jobs. And then you can say, hey, I want to be instructed on these sort of things, and I want that to be a career. And then the teachers work with you. And that's a non-hierarchical example. This is where the teacher doesn't have authority over the student, but the student doesn't have authority over the teacher. So you've pretty much eliminated oppression here. You've given people true freedom to express themselves in full. The economy around them will be shaped by their actions, not their actions. So what I meant to say is, all right, so their actions, right, will shape the economy, right? The economy is not going to force people to change their actions like in capitalist societies. No, the economy, how it's going to be is that people are giving personal choice to allow this economy to grow. What's your problem with that?
Yeah, but then you're looking at a community. You're not looking at an actual country, an actual functioning entity. If a town is in charge of its own economy, work. Granted, that could work. If a mining town breeds a generation of coal miners, and then you're artificially limiting say the kid wants a change of career. What if a coal miner, you go back to coal mine, what if it's a mining town? What if one of them suffers an injury at work where they lose a hand or something, and they can no longer do that job?
Then they can't.
Have to retrain. Now they may be 30 years old, 40 years old, They'd have to retrain. Their usefulness becomes, in this society, their usefulness is out the window. Because everyone is working according to the means. Everyone is working according to what the society actually needs. There's no room for innovation. Everything that you're on, Discord that you're using, has come from luxury. It's innovation through luxury, and innovation allowed by capitalism.
No, because if I gave you the option to write a book that would sell, right, you would pick something that's popular, something that you know would sell because there's people in demand of it. This would not be a book you personally care about, or a book that you even think is good for that matter. This stomps innovation. This is how you stomp innovation, because you're only doing something because it's profitable. And so then you have unethical examples and unethical practices.
Innovation. There will be other books. There will be other books. If I wanted to write a book, I would actually go to corner something that's not been done. Something that I wanted to write.
But if it were profitable, though, it would be different, would it not?
If everyone had wrote popular shit, I could go and read something like that. I would have a... If I was to write a book, might be a bad example, because if I was going to write a book, I would go to corner a gap in that market. And by that dint, it would be interesting. It would be something new. It would be an innovation.
I don't think you really
the way
putting...
you were forced to innovate. If I was to start a new social media, for example, that's been, all of them are just fucking absolutely monopolized. But if I wanted to start something new, I would have to look for a gimmick. I'd have to look for an innovation. I would have to look for something that sets me aside from Twitter or Facebook.
But is profit...
If I did another Twitter, there's nothing incentivizing people to come to my website rather than just going to Twitter.
Yeah, but is profit a purpose in this?
You're completely wrong.
Is profit...
Of course profit would be... Of course profit would be. I mean, it costs money to start anything up. To start a business, you require money. Unless you build everything yourself, which, 99.9% of people aren't going to have the ability to do. There's also purchasing the resources and the labour to manufacture them.
Oh, okay, but it's sort of...
You're going to want to at least break even.
Yeah, but it's sort of irrelevant because you wouldn't want...
If you're a very altruistic person, you're not going to want to lose money.
Okay, but you wouldn't want your site to be too controversial, or else you would lose profit, correct? You would want to appeal to the masses if it's for the sake of profit. If it's for the sake of your own self-interest and your own career and your own fantasies and that stuff, it's different.
Yeah, but on that point, controversy, I mean, you would get the money from the masses. It wouldn't be the advertisers. You would get the money from the masses. Because if you have a site like Gab is doing quite well now. Gab doesn't censor people and all that. And a lot of the alt-right that have been pushed off of Twitter and Facebook and that kind of thing have moved over to Gab. So Gab found that niche in the market.
Well, it marketed toward a certain demographic of people. But if you wanted to
it's marketed literally towards everyone.
Oh, yeah, but look, 99% of the people that use it are just right-wing meme lords.
That's your anarcho-communist utopia. You could go on Gab and fucking find a group full of anarcho-communists.
I think I'm going to have a hard time. I'm going to have a very hard time trying to find these people.
You'll probably find some.
It's 99% right-dominated, far-right dominated. It's...
Okay, you're not going to be pushed up.
Yeah, I'm not going to be...
have a lot of people calling you a cunt.
Yeah, I know, but...
pushed off or banned, you're still allowed to be there.
Yeah, but there's a reason that it doesn't appeal to the most amount of people, though.
And fucking lynch you.
Yeah, but it's not going to make the most amount of money. Because it doesn't appeal to the most amount of people, though.
They're doing alright, though. They're making profit.
Yeah, but you never make near as much...
Just because you want to earn a good living.
Yeah, but you only have so many people due to the limited ideological spectrum, okay? If you wanted to have as many people as possible and be completely limitless and, not attract all that kind of controversy, then you would just appeal to the masses, as I said. You wouldn't have any political ideology dominate it. And you can look at Gab and the people that created it. They clearly have political bias, so it's not neutral or anything like that.
No, but they still don't ban left wing.
They don't ban that. Yeah, I know.
You could go there and you could start talking anarcho-communism, and you'd probably find a small group of people that do use it. I thought Gab would appeal to the anarchists because there is no regulation in what you can say.
Yeah, that is an appeal.
Case if you only want regulation, say.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, but again, you're missing the greater point, which is that it's not going to appeal to the most amount of people, unlike something like Twitter or Facebook, right?
Oh, because of the monopoly. Because of the monopolies that have sprung up. And if you look at it, that when Twitter first came about, well, I'll say not first came about, but there was a time where Twitter was a case of, oh yeah, you can say whatever you want. It wasn't too long ago. Twitter was, oh yeah, say whatever you want, we won't ban you like Facebook does, ha ha ha. And now look at fucking Twitter. It's nothing short of a miracle that I'm still on there. If I had more followers, I would have been banned ages ago. But I don't really use Twitter for that reason.
Well, I understand that, but at the end of the day, though, innovation is going to come down to the fact that you want to improve on your work and you want to get better. And I think that as society, through the social body, should encourage this, but also should encourage it when you first start learning about a career you want to pursue. And if you think, like, I know why you're saying this, right? It's the same way people like you turn to fascism because there's a fear of anarchy, right? There's a fear of having what you perceive as chaos, but really, I like to just say it's a chaotic order. It's a bunch of people that are governing themselves mutually because they believe in something greater than just hiding behind some law enforcement. That's because you've really created a community, and you can be proud of this community and say, my commune is great, my union is even greater because of the people that live there, not because of some bunch of laws or of the state or anything like that, because these people choose to be good. And I want that kind of society where people and the society around them is shaped by individual actions and by collective actions and things like this. Not just because, you're going to be imprisoned.
Tyranny more than my can't see. Just because the whole country, you will end up with tyrannical communes because some people will decide what they want.
Yeah, and we can all split off from them, though.
They decide they want firm laws.
They could go their own separate ways.
If you give everyone the freedom to do whatever they want, everybody's going to agree with freedom.
Oh, I don't think that's historically relevant, there was a commune called the Paris Commune, which sprung up in France until it was crushed by fascist counterparts. But when it actually existed, it was successful because it was a mutual, non-hierarchical society.
Communism is fascist, by the way.
Huh?
I think the vast majority of people who oppose communism, you're not going to find a lot of fascists anymore.
Yeah, but these people were fascists, though.
Were they legitimate fascists? Yeah, they wanted
Yes.
a full authoritarian state and an actual authoritarian state.
Yeah,
They
very,
are an
yeah,
authoritarian
very imperialistic monarchy
state.
traditionalist.
No, again, we're back to the imperialist thing.
I know you don't
True
support that, but I'm
fascism
saying,
isn't about imperialism.
yeah, but I'm saying that is a
We had this
characteristic
discussion.
often associated with the movements in history, including people that crushed the Paris Commune.
Were they imperialist or were they French?
Well,
You
they
can't
were.
be an imperialist within your own land.
Oh well, you were trying to take away another country which proclaimed its own country. I mean, if a bunch of say a bunch of land isn't occupied legally, right? Nobody's bought this land, but a bunch of people happen to live in it, and it happens to be in your society. Like think of it as, what's an example of this? What's a country within a country? Let me take a look at this.
A country within a
Exclaves.
country. The Vatican.
Yeah, the Vatican, all right? So that's its own country, right? In the city of Rome in Italy, right? It's not part of Italy, different country. Okay, so, if you came and you stomped the Vatican, then you said, "All right, let's make it part of Rome, let's make it part of Italy," despite the fact that it already gained independence. It's the same with the Paris
It didn't
Commune.
gain independence. The Vatican was given independence by the state of the country, and it was given its own jurisdiction, and it was long agreed. Just because a country all of a sudden says, right, okay, this is a country. What if a fascist country, or a fascist commune formed in the middle of your society?
If
What
it
would you do?
proclaimed itself its own country and didn't want any part of
Yes.
this, yeah, and then it wasn't occupied by anybody. If it wasn't like taking anything that's already been built, then there's no problem. Then it could do whatever it wants.
But what if this commune had a change of heart because your government's not working? This commune has, let's say, it's got a vast oil field on it. It declares itself a country. It declares itself independent from your society.
I don't know
It's
how.
not going to be imperialist. It's true fascist. Down to the core, it's fascist. So it wants only what's best for its country. It's a country now. It wants to preserve its own tradition, its own people. What are you going to do?
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, as long as I get to keep the
But
commune.
You need what's there. No, it's not going to affect your outer commune, but you need what's there. And now you've got people looking at your lack of action and saying, well, hold on, they got away with it. Why can't we?
Well, if you
Then
want to
all of
go
a sudden you don't
join,
have a commune.
if you want to go join hands with fascism, then you're more than welcome to exit my area.
Okay, no, not even fascism. So the fascists break up. Say you have a very commune in the north. That commune splits over some internal struggle. Now you've got a group of anarcho-capitalists and fascists. Those two aren't going to get along, so the fascists split. Now the fascists have an internal thing. They split to National Socialists. So now you have a National Socialist commune, a fascist commune, which is now its own country, and anarcho-capitalists. So now they decide, okay, no, fuck you, we want our own.
They can just.
So you lose those communes as well.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be losing anything because I would already have my commune intact. If people want to leave this commune and go to any of the other communes, they're more than welcome to.
They've got their own. You've just lost a shit ton of resources.
Well, they can't just.
Resources aren't infinite.
They can't just take a bunch of resources. No, if I own a bunch of resources, right, and that's mine claimed territory, at least the part where I outline, then I say, well, no, you can't have this. You can cut around it, right, in an area that's not owned by you, and owned by us, I mean. You can cut around that. I have an issue with that. You can create minerals out of whatever. Just don't take what we've had because you've already settled.
That's their country.
Yeah, but we've already settled. We've already settled
Okay,
here.
so what's the difference then with Catalonia? When Catalonia declares themselves a country and they want all their shit that's on it, why can't the Spanish then come and take it back? What's theirs?
Let me take a look at this for a second. Spanish Empire.
I'm using that as an example. I don't know if that is the case. I'm not. They're really sure how they want independence.
Okay, so the Spanish Empire dissolved into it dissolved in 1975. I'm looking at it now. Withdrawal from the Spanish Sahara. Yeah, okay. Okay, so a country that was already imperialistic, right? That was already colonizing other countries, has a bit that branches off and doesn't want anything to do with it and doesn't want to be part of this. That's wrong? Well, no, because if you started a little society in the British Empire once it was, the British Empire, then nobody should call that imperialistic or fighting against the norm of the country when a country is going against others. I don't consider that wrong at all.
Right, okay, so that would be the same with our little fascist government there then. You have all of these tribes, or all of these groups and that. Some groups, I'm telling you, are going to fight. That's unavoidable. When you have no central law, when you have no keeping force or anything like that, there are going to be communities that fight. Maybe one of them becomes imperialistic. So maybe my little fascist commune wants to split apart, wants to get away from it, wants to defend our borders, and we make our own country. We need resources. We're not going to be getting resources off the community because we've had to separate through whatever reason.
No, because okay, but you can't just take the resources that I've already settled though. You would have to find your own resources.
Right, they're not yours.
No, because that's
They don't
ours.
belong to anyone.
No, it belongs.
We're a country now. They're ours. They belong to our country.
No, because you can't just claim a territory which has resources that we were already using.
But the resources that were mined by the fact, don't the workers control that resource? Don't they control that means of production?
Yeah, sure, but you're giving this to another society. I mean, I don't think
it's the same society. It's the same people, but we're taking it.
But no, because I want a country. I don't want this. See, I'm not sure if you're implying this, but I'm not. I do want a society. Like, I'm not one of these people that don't believe in the concept of countries. I do think that I want to.
You're talking about communes, and you're talking about ideas that can work on small scales, but are never going to work as a form of country.
Although they have worked as
you have
countries.
Half worked isn't good enough. If something half works, it's still half fucked.
Well, you mean because of fascism? I think that's what you're trying to say. I think what you're trying to say is if you left these societies and these communes alone, then they would develop naturally.
No, some will develop naturally. I think fascism is a far more natural. To seek order is far more natural than to seek chaos. In fact, I've probably got a rosier view on humanity. I think you are far more likely to want to seek order than you are to seek chaos, especially when you seek disunity. This is why fascism comes about in times of turmoil, because people seek order. It's not through imperialism or anything like that. It is the primal need to get that order, to get things back to some semblance of normality.
No, this is a perception of what these people believe. These people are cowards who don't have the abilities to get off on themselves. They get up on their own knees, right, and take care of themselves. They need people to take care of them for them. I want a collectivist society. I want a society where.
No. Yeah, how is it cowardly? If you elect a leader who's going to help you, and you know that it's going to bring about a thing where, maybe you are going to have to make some sacrifices for fascist society. You're not going to be able to do all the things you want to do, but it's for a greater good. You're self-sacrificing. That is the exact sort of self-sacrifice you're talking about, except it actually has a result at the end of it that's not fucking mass starvation.
No, I'm sorry to tell you this.
You're not putting all of your faith into some. You're buckling down and you're saying, right, there are going to be some unpalatable times. Not everything is going to be rosy. Fucking knuckling down and we're going to deal with it. It's not utopian, it's utilitarianism. Utopianism is the pussy way out. You think you put all the faith in this and it's all going to work out fine. And even if it does, you end up with weakness. Hard times, strong men. You've heard that.
Yeah, I think what is weak is reverting back to what you perceive to be working for all these centuries, when in reality it hasn't. I don't think that the
Yes, it did.
No, it
The
didn't
West is not
function.
built on fucking communism. It worked. Just because
No,
not
it
everyone's
didn't.
happy.
What kind of
Unfortunately, that's the point of
fascist
life.
society has worked? Can you give me an example of this?
Ancient Rome, Nazi Germany.
Yeah, ancient Rome didn't work in the sense that
Nazi Germany, they were fucking eating each other before Hitler took power.
Well, you could say that during Nazi Germany there was.
It worked.
You know,
Without the war, it would have endured.
Yeah, well, the
Without
actual Nazi
external
Germany.
influence, it would still be there. I'm telling you now.
Well,
it was iron solid.
No, because what I'm talking about with Nazi Germany, it did function, but the inherent fascist elements of Nazi Germany were keeping it back because it didn't allow for personal choice and didn't allow people to express their freedom normally. You would have people.
No, okay. Oh, they had to stop eating each other. How terrible.
No, because I'm not saying it was good before then.
It brought people out of an absolute state of just abject despair. We talk about economic turmoil in the West. This was something else.
Yeah, there was still a big government
You know,
then.
there are pictures of... Huh?
There was still a big government in the German Empire.
What, the Weimar Republic? Where there was... where they tried essentially what you're saying. Where they tried to have a fucking little bit of this, little bit of that, and it miraculously didn't work.
No,
You've got more cases of fascism working than you have communism.
No, because prior to World War II, the end of World War II at least, most European countries were rather militant, actually, were rather authoritarian. We had bigger governments. You said it yourself. Bigger church, bigger governments,
Exactly.
all those. And yeah, you could say there was a decline after, but not due to this. There was more freedom and more prosperity after World War II, not relating to the effects of war. I'm talking about the inherent nature of these countries, because it allowed for personal choice. During the times prior to World War II, the reason that people were happy in certain sectors was because of traditional values and traditional roles that they hold dear. Prior to, telling people to go against their biology, which is why I'm for, traditionalism if it's done progressively, if it's done as a choice. I don't like this radical traditionalist approach, and I think that human beings will naturally revolt against a government, which is what they do, in which no government is stable forever. You could say what's happening in Germany right now is a form of fascism, by replacing a native population with another population through force, not because the people want it in any way.
That's nothing to do with fascism at all. I don't know how you... If you said imperialism, I would maybe agree with you. But I don't know how you think subverting your own people through the use of foreign invaders is an anything. That is the absolute opposite of fascism. Taking steps to see your society and your culture endure, that's fascism. Importing a fucking shit ton of African, Middle Eastern savages so that your country becomes unrecognisable, that is definitely 100% not fascism.
Is it not done by the state? Is the state not doing this? Are private owners who want to pay migrant workers less not doing this?
Is it what? No, this is inefficiency. This is.
If you gave the German people, the means to control their countries, all right? Give power to the people, and you wouldn't have this immigration cycle. You wouldn't have any of this, and you wouldn't have the nightmare that is Germany today.
If you give the German, you're arguing to let the fucking German people uprise, there's going to be a bloodbath. I tell you this now, there is going to be carnage. If that's what you want, fine. I would rather see a fucking military force, an organised force, a disciplined force, than just see a load of pissed off German skinheads take matters into their own hands.
No, I mean the German people as a whole, because we're not talking about hierarchy. We're talking about a country where everybody has an equal authority. They have equal authority, they have an equal amount of power. Okay, you wouldn't have these hierarchies forming between third worlders and the native citizens and the people and the settlers and the immigrants and these sort of things. You
Well,
would
what
have
if these people? What if people want them there? What if you get the fucking idiots waving refugee welcome signs? They've got equal
you know
authority to let them in,
how I
have
was
they?
talking about tribes splitting up. People who want a very nationalistic society could go one way, and Germany could succeed in this sense. And the people that wanted immigrants could have their country. And you could pretty much do this with any society when you allow the people to choose, not one government which has all the power and will never change and will keep things the way it is, which is directly responsible, by the way, for
You'll
everything
end
we see
up
in Germany.
with absolute disunity and war. You'll just breed disunity, and then there will be war.
How? What kind of war? You mean war between the two countries?
War between the countries, war between the tribes. Without that central power overruling people, without a unity of belief, and if you can't have a unity of belief, then you have a unity under. You have people following the same laws, and if you don't have that, then you're just going to end up with carnage. If Germany succeeded into ultra-nationalists and the new hordes, there's going to be fucking war. Without sense, if they defined a border, they clearly delineated a border between the two, there would be war.
Well, there's the current status.
Same with anywhere else, really. Same with anywhere else, there is going to be war.
No, there's the current status
I
of
reckon even
Turkey.
if California seceded from America, there would probably be war.
Well, it's only because the United States has a tendency to, attack anything which goes on its own directions. It's the same with the Confederacy. It's the same with the Soviet Union. It's the same with Vietnam and North Korea. But on to the point of, I was going to mention Turkey, which used to be the Ottoman Empire. That currently sits pretty well with Europe. That doesn't have any conflict, despite the fact that the people are very much different, because they decided for Turkey to be independent and to stay the way it is. You can give enough power to the
Have you
people.
seen the direction?
Well, I've seen some direction, but
This is the thing. You're using Turkey as a really bad example. Turkey is a shitty example that you're using. Turkey is riven by civil war already. Well, not so. I wouldn't say civil war in like large scale sense, but you have the thing with the Kurdish. That's number one in Turkey, and two, Turkey is stable at the moment because shit, what's his name? You know the guy, the Prime Minister of Turkey. Fuck, I can't remember his name. But he is a hardline Islamist. He is a very hardline Islamist. So he's theocratic. He's also pretty conservative. He's right. And also, he has given himself, after this little manufactured coup that was a couple of years ago. You remember this coup? The military tried to take a coup, and then, it failed, and lots of people going to prison for that. He's given himself a lot more powers. He's removed term limits. So, essentially, what you're arguing is the stability of Turkey has come about through a right dictator.
Okay, but Kurdistan hasn't been given independence, has it? If you gave power to the Kurdish people and you didn't believe that one state should have a monopoly and control and authority over somebody else's geographical outlines and the people that reside within a certain territory, then this is a state problem, obviously. If you had anarchy, people could just decide what is best for them automatically.
But why do you think that a country is going to give up? One, it's a point of it's a show of weakness to cede territory. That's number one. And two, why are they going to give up a territory that they have historically held, especially if they benefit?
Well, that's because they have the conventional economy. I recommend that there are ways to change an economy, and I told you how you would do it. But even if they're not going to do that, like the historical image of Turkey, it changed all the time over the years. Anyway, I don't think Turkey has had a very positive.
It's an Islamist regime. It's a right-wing Islamist regime.
Yeah, well, it's one way of describing it. Sure, but what's your point?
Well, no, it is. It's getting further right. It's getting further right. You're pointing to Turkey as being stable and able to, sort of peacefully-ish coexist with Europe. And then you're sort of backing up my point. Turkey has gone more closer to theocratic fascism than they have liberalism or your utopian ideas. They're far closer to that than they are to what I'm saying. And then you have Kurdistan, you have this little pocket of socialists and the PKK. Very different ideas.
Yeah, but different ideas deserve different nations.
Yeah, okay, then why are they attacking Turkey?
Because they
Why
want...
aren't they fortifying their own?
Well, they
Why are
should
they
actually.
Turkey in
Well,
Turkish territory.
Yeah, it's not
Turkey
a great...
has a different idea.
It's not a great campaign, is what I'm trying to say. But what is inherent about this is that there needs to be a separation of these sort of people. There's heaps of causes for this, heaps of differences between the Turks and the Kurds, and they're not the same.
Yeah, but they are separated. There's not, as far as I'm aware, there's no major military. So they're separate.
Well, in a sense, I mean...
So why are they still fighting?
I think the cause is by your stance, then people shouldn't have countries in because they're all really separated. Yeah, you can have a bunch of Somalis immigrating to England. You have heaps of them.
This isn't my fucking ideal. We're talking about two very different people that have split up of a different geographical delineation, and surprise, surprise, they're still not getting on.
Well, guess what?
This is what would happen in your country. People are going to split, and there's going to be war.
No, it's not going to be war. People are going to split peacefully, and they're going to go off and do their own thing, and they're going to allow the commune to remain stable.
Then why is no one else, man?
Look, what
makes you different from Kurdistan?
What makes me different from Kurdistan? Because, well, firstly, I'm in control of things, and I don't have an authority. Look, everybody there is treated equally.
You're in control of things, but you don't have a gun.
No, I'm not in control of things. I mean,
You're controlling things how? What, are you going to stand out?
No. I mean, the people, the community, right? They control everything, right? As I said. So, well, what do they do in these sort of situations?
What if there's more of the other?
Yeah, okay. Well, why would they be in the community again? Are you saying that most people, when I start a commune, are going to turn? This could be the same for any society of any ideology.
Well, when you start disagreeing, and there's no law, and there's no glue to hold
you don't
it
need
together,
a state. The glue that holds it together are the people that decide what is right and what is wrong. And their judgment can be used to take out people who are clearly aggressive, who are clearly infringing upon the rights of people to have a society and have a peaceful way of life, and to not oppress other people. So what's the issue arising here? Well, where's the state necessary?
The state is necessary to prevent it ever getting to the point.
What, you mean like suppressing freedom to protest?
War every 5 minutes and you want to become the fucking Democratic Republic of the Congo or Somalia. Okay, if Somalia had a fascist state that clamped down on the Islamists and the warlords.
Well, no. If it had a fascist state, it would be supporting the Islamists and the warlords. I would assure you that.
Why would it be? No. If it was a theocratically fascist state, fine, okay. Say it had a secular fascist state. So it had a more secular fascist state, like sort of or even a fucking Catholic fascist state. No, we'll go with mine. They've got a Catholic fascist state. Are they going to be supporting the Islamists?
Well, no, obviously not. But what's your point?
Okay. So they're not going to be supporting the Islamists, they're not going to be supporting these sowers of discord. They would crush them. Somalia would be ordered. Somalia wouldn't be anarchist. The state would bring that about. So why haven't the people of Somalia, in this abject lack of order, lack of a state, lack of a real police force...
Except it does have a state and it does have a police force. I was referring to Somalia during a certain period. In the current structure... The current structure...
Okay, we'll go back to that time then. Why didn't they form an anarcho-communist utopia?
Well, okay, we'll take into account Somalia now. It has Sharia law, very harsh Sharia law, and it's still not doing that. Take into account Iraq and Syria with ISIS. How come they're not crushing people who are clearly breaking laws and who are clearly oppressing other people in their country, and they're against that, but they're not doing
Syria
this.
has been fucked over. Syria was nice and stable. Syria was under Libya. Libya was under a benevolent dictatorship. Libya had the highest living standards in the whole of Africa. It was safe enough to be a Christian there. It was safe to be a Muslim. You couldn't go to the market and buy a slave in. And then interference, disorder, collapse of government, and now look, you have breeding grounds for slavers, rapists, and terrorists.
Yeah,
This
I
is
don't.
what happens
I don't
when
think
you
that's.
lose order.
Yeah, I don't think that has to do with order. Because you have to. I would have to examine this case. You're just throwing out examples. What was Libya court at the time?
I'm throwing out examples because they're relevant examples.
Yeah, what was Libya court at the time?
Hang on, 2 seconds. Right. I'm about to have my dinner.
All right, that's fair enough.
Yeah, it's what? 3:30, nearly 3:30 here. I'm gonna have my dinner. I've got to pop out. Are you gonna be around a bit later?
Probably not. It's late here in Australia.
Oh yeah, I forget you're fucking other side of the world. Well, I'm gonna have my dinner. I can be on for another. So what's on the shop? I'm gonna be on for another 10-15 minutes after. And then I've got to pop out, go get some bits very soon.
No, it's okay. You can go now.
Yeah?
You're all right. That's fine, man. It's been good talking.
Yeah, no worries. Look, I'm definitely happy to carry it on another day. In Syria and Libya.
All right, that's fine. Well, you take care then.
Yeah, no worries, mate.